probably recognize his work because he's done videos for Jo Jorgensen and other campaigns as well. So for all of our speakers in Zoom, I'm going to drop that link in our chat so you can follow around as well. Videos for Jo Jorgensen and other campaigns as well. So for all of our speakers in Zoom, I'm going to drop that link in our chat so you can follow around as well. Videos for Jo Jorgensen and other campaigns as well. So let me confirm we're able to share with Stephen.
This is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing. This is a left-wing problem. The question is, Justice, radical left. Will you shut up, man? Listen, who is on your list, Joe? Who's on your list?
Gentlemen, I think
this is so unprecedented. He's going to pack the court.
We have ended this segment. Wait a minute.
Democrats and the Republicans have botched it up so badly, and they're never going to admit and say, well, we made a mistake. There's no chance. The American people have to look for another option.
They don't even have a core philosophy. It's basically the red team versus the blue team.
Well, Vice President, no.
Can I be honest? It's a very important question.
No,
he stood up.
No, the answer to the question is no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion, if you
that is absolutely
you know what,
not true.
You're going to have
true.
Gentlemen. I hate to raise my voice, but it seems to me, why shouldn't I be different than the two of you?
We are facing the logical conclusion of the Republicans and Democrats having control of every lever of power in government for over 160 years and using it to take the power from us and give it to themselves. The alternative that we have given to this, Dr. Jo Jorgensen.
I think that there should be 4 of us on stage. I think anybody who has gathered the support to be on the ballot in enough states to theoretically win the election should be on that stage. You know best how your money should be spent. You know best what your family priorities are. You know best what's best for you. As I ask for your vote this November, it's not because I'm asking you to cast a vote for me. Instead, I think you should vote for you. It's easy to feel like the change I'm talking about just can't happen. I believe it can because I believe in you.
Okay, it looks like the video is wrapping up on our live screen. So what did everyone think? Did y'all have a chance to watch it on your own? Matt, I know you had seen it before.
I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you, Lauren. You're really muted. No, I'm sorry. Still can't hear you. I don't know why we're all of a sudden having technical difficulties.
It was weird. I could hear her a little bit, and
yeah,
just...
but she was talking into a barrel or something.
Yeah, but now it's gone completely.
Yeah, and all right, so we're having some technical issues right now. But we have been live for 40 minutes, so we didn't lose all of that from earlier. So that's good. So since Lauren can't hear me, I guess I'll just keep going with it. Did y'all watch it? I didn't see it on the Zoom side, but I've watched it before, and I watched it on the Facebook Live side on my end. Have y'all seen it yet? Did y'all get a chance to watch it?
I couldn't see it. I'm strapped in with my mic and my headphones and I can't reach my computer.
Right. So basically, it's a similar message to what we're talking about, and one of the things that stood out was that Trump said this is not a left thing or a right thing, and it's, I mean, yeah, sure, but really it is to them because they're the same team, right? So, and the Commission for Presidential Debates has proven that they are the same team. Alicia, since this is kind of your lane, do you want to talk a little bit more about how that works and what you've seen in your experience? I know you kind of talked about it last week, but holding a bunch of people.
So I had it on mute because my dogs were going crazy. I'm still traveling, so I'm joining you here from the wild, on fire West Coast. So yeah, I enjoyed the video. It was well done. There was a couple of things that really stood out to me. One is it really highlighted sort of the bickering and the fact that it wasn't a debate of ideas. We didn't have, not just this last debate, but it's frequently that way. It's not a debate of ideas where we're talking about real differences in policies. It's more like who can give more to the American people, who can bribe the American people, who can make, like with the primaries, it's like you can make the most flagrant promises. And then in the general, it's exactly what Dr. Jorgensen said, which is that it's just the red team and the blue team, and it's just fighting amongst each other on who's going to vote for the red team versus the blue team. And it's not about policy differences. It's not about what's best for the American people and what direction we want to take this country. So I can talk a little bit about how the Commission on Presidential Debates supports the two-party duopoly. They have, by the way, changed their information to say that they are bipartisan and not nonpartisan. We talked about that a little bit last week, but they are blatantly now just Republican and Democrat. They don't even pretend to consider the third parties or independent candidates.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Alicia, we would love your commentary on that. Stephen, can we get Alicia on the screen? There might just be a lag there, I'm not sure, but yes, this is exactly what we wanted to talk about today.
And my dog's been banished, so hopefully it won't be so distracting now. The cat's still here, so he might come around, but So the Commission on Presidential Debates, and I won't get in as much as we did last week on the history behind them, but they were formed by agreement between the two major parties, so between the Republicans and the Democrats, back after Ross Perot nearly upset the election. And what was that, 88, 92, something like that, with between Bush and Clinton. So after that, the two major parties decided we don't want that again. So they stopped participating with the League of Women Voters as the host for the presidential debates, stopped doing it on a soundstage in Washington, D.C., and started having like these big extravagant events, usually hosted at universities. And there's an agreement between the two major parties, and there's new agreements every cycle that they will be the sole hosts of debates. There will be no competition for the debates. And if there's any third party or independent who is on the debate stage, the other two can decide not to debate at all. So they've set up, the criteria to be impossible to meet. It gives the look of legitimacy, but it's not legitimate. We're all familiar. I think if you've been around the Liberty Movement long enough, you know that you're supposed to poll 15% to be on the debate stage, and then they don't include you in the polls, and they have a bunch of reasons for why they don't include you in the polls. So it becomes functionally impossible to meet the criteria. So the whole idea is to create this spectacle between the red and the blue teams, And it's a big fundraising bonanza for them both. They make huge amounts of money on debate night. If you watch it, you'll notice that it's almost set up like a sporting event. It's one of the things that my husband, who is British, he's an American citizen now, but he always comments on how weird it is that Americans treat our debates like a sporting event. You've got the two profiles, like it's almost like Monday Night Football between them, and there was never really, it's long stopped being a treatment of this idea of like, we're going to have a robust First Amendment type discussion about what we want the American people, what the American people want as far as how we're going to move forward as a culture and for policy. So, I think we're going to see more of that tonight. We have two calmer people, but it's still going to be about the red versus the blue.
It's going to be a show. It's going to be a circus. And I think, Hannah, this very much from the inside as a media personality. Would love for your perspective as well. Alicia, you bring a brilliant legal mind to the table, and I appreciate the insight on the CPD. Hannah, let's talk about this media circus.
Right. Well, the media is totally complicit in the voter suppression that consistently goes on year in and year out. But I don't know how intentional it is. We talk a lot about the bias in media, and of course there is. But, I'm biased. I have my own views. I have things I'm trying to communicate when I'm writing in the media, and I think it's natural that others do as well. I think that we do have a problem where consistently we don't have enough outlets for people who are not hard left or hard right to go and be successful at. There's only a handful of libertarian or liberty leaning type outlets where people can write, where they can give commentary, where they're asked to come on cable news channels. And so it's a real problem where we don't even have a platform for the media who would be supportive, much less the candidates that they would be informing people about, or the issues that they would be informing people about. On top of that, media is struggling. A lot of media throughout this country is having to lay off journalists, furlough them right now. Especially local outlets are having to do that. And so we don't see the media have the resources that it needs to really cover and report the news, much less all of the different issues. It takes time to really be informed and to really dig into an issue and to know everything about it. And I just don't think that we see the resources being provided for people to deliver. I also think the media is responding to what the market wants. I believe in the free market. And people often say, oh, the media is making us biased. No, you're really biased as a society, and the media is responding to that. They're giving you what you want to hear, and largely people want to live in echo chambers. And so the media is providing that. Largely people want to hear really angry people say extremist things. And so the media is providing that. And so I think all of it kind of works together, where we do have a really fraught problem in this country, where we're not having any kind of coverage of a wide span of candidates or issues, or really digging in and giving good reporting. When one candidate lies and misstates something, we don't see the media often following up and saying, no, actually, here's what this was. Here's what was in this bill. Here's what this did. Because they don't have the time or resources either. And because most Americans don't care to read it if they did. So it is just a catch-22 that we're in. But certainly, when we see the media conducting polls and leaving other candidates out of those polls, knowing that that's what's needed for them to get into the debates, that's a problem. When we see them not covering other candidates, we see them not even educating people about the presence of other options for them, that's a problem. And so that's a huge issue. We need more people to get involved, but we also need more funders to back outlets and give a platform to people who want to provide this kind of information.
Well, and you're speaking to my heart as a fundraiser, so thank you. We'll definitely talk about how People for Liberty hopes to play a role in providing a platform and in funding educational initiatives and advocacy as well. Ramon, as a candidate, you have experienced this firsthand. So would love your perspective as a candidate, what it was like getting on the ballot, what it was like getting media attention. How are you getting the word out, and what are some of the challenges that you faced as a candidate currently campaigning?
So it was a little bit different for me because the Libertarian Party was founded in the state of Colorado. So there has been a little bit more groundwork done here. So me getting on the ballot wasn't necessarily hard. We actually had our very first statewide primary this year, and I ended up happening to be the winner of that for the U.S. Senate. So definitely that was different because in the state of Colorado, there is a law that allows unaffiliated voters to participate in the primary process. They can either choose Republicans or Democrats because of the Libertarians' bylaws and the adjustment that would have had to be made, again, because this was the first primary. Unaffiliated voters were not able to participate in the Libertarian primary. Now, depending on your views of those things, I am personally for party members pretty much just participating in the primaries because there's a lot of outside influence. You can see people dropping their party affiliation, voting for the candidate that they want to represent that other party so that their candidate can win. There can be a whole lot of things going on with that, but that's what happened for me in this upcoming election. However, pretty much everything, again, that Jo Jorgensen, Spike Cohen are facing, again, without being ignored, not being able to participate in the debates, I'm facing that same thing. We had a debate actually yesterday. I was not aware of that until somebody texted me this morning.
Oh, wow.
So there have already been 2 debates that I have not been able to participate in. But as we were on earlier, again, we have to kind of stop expecting that. We already know how they're doing things, why they're doing them. We have to take a different approach. So for myself, I'm using some of my secondary employment to help me. A lot of things I do on the side are like brand ambassador work. Technically, I'm like a model outside of this. So sometimes I just slide people my business cards, my flyers, say, hey, vote for me. And hopefully you guys win, maybe throw in a little side segment there on this little article. Hasn't happened, but hey, I try. So outside of that, though, just going out, meeting people, can't really be picky. We can use all the statistics that we want, all the data that we want. But push come to shove, there are a lot of people out there that don't vote. And those people that don't vote aren't in data. They won't be found. You have to go out and just speak to people.
Very true. Very true.
And you have to, there's a podcast out there and it says like, speak the F up. So that's what you really have to do. You have to speak up. You have to make your voice heard. Again, not be so boisterous where you turn people off, but at least to the point where, you can actually engage people and encourage them to say, hey, you know what? I never thought about that. Let me consider you.
I love that. And I love you getting creative, Ramon. I think that that's one of the opportunities as well as the challenges that libertarian candidates face, that they can be creative. Stephen, I'd love to get all 3 of our speakers on the screen. So let's see Alicia, let's see Hannah, let's see Ramon. And, we don't need to see my face, but I'd like to ask all 3 of them to share their thoughts on this current election cycle. We know that it's been a circus. We know that the Commission on Presidential Debates has rigged the public debates that people are able to watch, including the one tonight. We know that it has been an uphill battle for candidates, including Jo Jorgensen, Spike Cohen, federal candidates like Ramon, as well as local and state candidates as well at the lower level. So would love for Alicia, Hannah, and Ramon, talk to us a little bit about this election cycle in general and what you think may have been different, and then where we see things really staying the same. Alicia, let's get your perspective first, because you've got a long kind of history in and around the movement. So what feels different about this election cycle, and where is it just more of the same, circus?
Well, I think that the difference of this election cycle has to do with the major party candidates. I mean, there's a lot of attention being paid to President Trump, more so than to Biden, and no attention is being paid at all to the third party candidates, either the Libertarians or the Green Party candidates. I don't think that part, that there's no attention being paid to the third parties, is not a huge departure from the past. We had more media in 2012 and 2016 because of the relationships that the governors on our tickets had, but we were still largely ignored. And to the extent that we weren't ignored, it was, you're going to get Donald Trump elected if you vote for, Gary Johnson. So I'm not even hearing that so much this cycle. I feel like Dr. Jorgensen is completely being ignored. Like there's just nothing anywhere on her. She's not on any of the of the polling, hardly, even less than in the past. There's no mainstream media. There's no attention. There's not even any discussion about whether or not the third party, the Green Party or the Libertarian Party, are going to tip the scales in some of our closer, states. So there's a lot of like craziness that's happening in this election. I mean, I've never seen. Well, I'm in my mid 40s. I've been watching, elections since Reagan. I've never seen it quite this ridiculous. But I don't know but that doesn't really have a bearing on what's happening with third parties. I mean, we're just basically being told at this point, like, you've got Trump, and for the people who are just really love Trump, and then for all the rest of the sane people, it's Biden. Like, he's just been kind of forced upon everybody who doesn't want to see this country being led by Donald Trump. And that's what we're seeing. And Trump hangs himself. So he does his own ridiculous behavior on the debate stage. He does his own ridiculous behavior on Twitter and dealing with COVID and everything else. And he's mercurial and strange. The rest of the country, I don't want this. Yeah. But he's almost like his own worst campaign enemy. So it's interesting from the standpoint of being curious about politics and how people behave. But as far as it assisting the Libertarian Party, I don't think it does. And I think that, honestly, the statement that both the parties are the same actually hurts the Libertarian Party. For us to say that Democrats and Republicans are exactly the same, it's not bearing out this time. I mean, I think you can say that in past elections if they've had similar policies, economically, foreign policies and things like that. There's a huge contrast this time. And so I think that we actually lose credibility when we say that. What we ought to be saying is, okay, you kind of got forced into these two candidates. If you don't feel comfortable with either of them, there is an alternative. It's just, you're just being silenced. That to me is a better message.
I appreciate that, Alicia. Hannah, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it is an exceptionally stupid election cycle right now. But I think that it's important to know why. When I think about this election cycle and really, what the past 4 years mean in this country, I just go back to the culture war over and over and over. I slightly disagree with Alicia. I do think that the two parties operate very similarly, but they speak very differently, right? They have very different rhetoric, very different talking points. But if you watch the votes, they do vote very similarly, even on things that you would think would be very diverse, like funding of Planned Parenthood or things of that nature. You'd be surprised how many Republicans are voting for that. And so to me, I think that we are consistently starting to talk about the culture war more. I think that's why people like Donald Trump. I think they felt like they were getting beat in the culture war. They had a strong man come out that's on the offense. He's pushing back. It makes them feel good. It makes them feel like somebody's standing up for them. But at the base of that, the problem is that people don't know how to talk policy. They don't even know how to get into the weeds, how to really pay attention to what the differences are between the two campaigns, between the two major parties and their policies. And so they go to the culture war because they can fight on those grounds, and they understand that. And it's creating a lot of fear, right? Whose values are going to win out in this election cycle? And what that comes back to is the federal government having too much power. The federal government shouldn't be deciding whose values dominate somebody else's in this society. That's why we had the structures that we had, were to restrain the federal government, to make sure that we didn't have blue states lording over red states or red states lording over blue states. We were supposed to have a limited amount of things the federal government was addressing, and that is no longer the case. And so because of that, you do have a real fear between people where I think, the one silver lining I'm seeing, especially during COVID, is people are starting to recognize just how broken the system is in general. When we saw the riots this summer, when we saw some of the criminal justice things that have come up, when we've seen even the debates last week, people are saying, wow, what an embarrassment for our country. Both parties are complicit in this. Both parties have had involvement in passing these laws or been, engaging in behavior that we find really embarrassing. But they're so afraid of losing the culture war and having their values taken away or having someone else's values forced upon them, that I do think you're seeing less willingness for people to divert from the two parties this election season and to pay attention to it, because they are so focused on getting the other person out of office, getting their person in office. And so I think that's what really stands out to me as a whole. And again, I think we have to go back to the main message of government has too much control in the first place, right? You're right to be a little bit afraid because it is too big, too powerful. It is broken across the board, but that is why we need to return to these principles of limited government.
I love it. And, I'd say the contrast in your comments and Alicia's, Hannah, again, very much the same. The distinction between the rhetoric and the messaging used by the parties, it's what they feel their base will respond to. So, Ramon, what was it about this election cycle that you really felt you had to run? This was it. This was the time change needed to happen, and you were the person this election cycle. Tell us about your thought process in joining the race.
So my thought process in joining the race was actually the pandemic. I was briefly considering it last year, and the fact that, I was looking at, finances, time off, all of these things being taken into consideration. I was like, no. I started to wane from it. And then, the whole COVID-19 situation happened. I would say it's been a blessing and a curse, sadly to say, so many people lost their jobs. So many people, are losing their lives as well from COVID. But in this particular instance, it did grant an opportunity to really change the narrative. The fact that, I'm able to work from home now instead of having to drive and sit in traffic for 1.5 hours per day going to and from. So that definitely changed. And just being able to meet people. The pandemic has changed that. So for me to run, it was just seeing people hurt. That was one. Seeing the opportunity to run. That was two. And then three, I've done it before. I do have the experience. I've ran for state senate in 2016 as a Republican. I left the party after that election cycle, and I actually ran in 2018 for Congress for the city and county Denver for CD1 out here in Colorado as well. So having that experience, knowing how difficult it is already in a state and an area where people are already not looking towards what they would consider fringe candidates, but they're looking at not even the Libertarian Party to begin with. It was difficult to run as a Republican. So understanding how it feels to do more with a whole lot less, that definitely allowed me to join. And I just love it. If I didn't enjoy politics, I would have never stayed after 2016 because I was the guinea pig. The first time I ran, they said I was a young Black male and I was a Republican. So that was the token moment. And after that, I do it now.
Well, and I love that you had that opportunity and you learned from it. And you said, you know what, it's going to be different this time. I think also, Ramon, your share about your personal experience in the pandemic and how it led you to pursue this opportunity. Alicia and Hannah, this goes, I think, back to Hannah's point about the government being too big, too noisy, too in our faces, and too much in control of our lives. The pandemic has really brought that to light for many people. And so in my mind, Hannah mentioned the culture wars. We're in a cultural zeitgeist, a moment where there has been this absolute tornado of awareness and interest around causes where politics play a key role. So Alicia, when you think about the pandemic and the cultural zeitgeist, Black Lives Matter, so many things happening, why is this the time for third-party candidates, for the Libertarian Party and principles in general, and the time for Jo Jorgensen and Spike Cohen, if we consider those factors?
Well, I think that both parties are able to point at the other side and say, look at your bad record on this issue, right? So the Republicans are rightfully pointing at Joe Biden, for example, and saying, you passed the crime bill, right? That ended up with a bunch of Black men in jail. And now we have this crisis. And so it's not like either party can claim purity on any of this stuff. Because, and this is where I do agree with Hannah, there's a lot of their policies really are the same. Politicians in Washington, D.C., they serve the same masters. They start to think alike when they spend a lot of time together. And so mostly what we have is a difference of rhetoric. There isn't a person, you can't look at the Democratic Party and say, this is the party that's going to save us from racial inequality, from police abuse, from state abuse. This isn't the party that's going to look at a pandemic and have an intelligent response, because we've had 50 different responses across 50 different states, and all of our states have bad breakouts. All of our states have economic crisis. Like, nobody has really like fared, you know, Hawaii's kind of done okay, but nobody's really fared great, you know, as a result of COVID. And so, you know, you can demonize, you know, and the Democrats are good at like demonizing Donald Trump about this, but how much responsibility does one person have? Well, if we're going to say that one person is going to be completely in charge of our country, neither of those parties have really good track records. I also think that now this opens up the discussion about the imperial presidency and whether or not this is a good idea. Like yesterday, Trump tweets that we're not going to have a stimulus, and the stock market crashed 600 points like within minutes. You know, we should not have a president who is so powerful that everybody's retirement accounts take a hit every time he has a funny tweet or a temper tantrum of any kind. That's not what America is about. We're not supposed to be ruled by a king or dictators. We're supposed to be self-governing. And this is the time for libertarians to say, okay, everybody's super frustrated and angry and broke, and the promise of America has been broken. And the answer to some of these questions is not keep doing the same thing we've been doing, keep reelecting the same people we've been reelecting. It's time for us to look at alternative ways of moving forward. And looking at returning to some of the things that did work in this country, which is what I like about libertarianism, because it does have sort of this classical liberal underpinning that did work at the beginning of the country in some ways, and shouldn't be thrown out with the bathwater.
I love it. Hannah, from your perspective, why now? Given the cultural zeitgeist, given this moment in time that we're in, why is this the time for people to vote third party, to consider the Libertarian Party and principles in particular, and to vote for Jo Jorgensen and Spike Cohen and our other Libertarian candidates?
Well, listen, I mean, not that I want us to run around doing this, but this is an I told you so season for libertarians. I mean, if you look at what's happening in our society, you know, individual liberty has never been under more attack than it is right now. Look at the lockdowns. Look at how they have taken away people's livelihoods, carte blanche. Look at how they have restricted people's movements. And neither major party is supporting free markets. We see that they consistently are rigging the system for their friends. They are working against the average American economically in that way. These are things we've been preaching for a long time. You know, we've been pointing to the need for immigration policies. We've been saying restricting free movement is a violation of human rights. I think maybe people will hear that differently now when they've had their own movement restricted. I hope they do. You know, we've been saying that we need school choice, that the government shouldn't decide based on your zip code how and where you go to school and how much money you get and what kind of education you get. We need to give families those dollars, let them apply it to the school and opportunities that they find best for their child. Let's bring competition back into the market. You know, I think there's a lot of parents right now with kids at home doing virtual education or not even getting an education at all because their school's still shut down thanks to the government, who would really like that $15,000 per kid that we're still paying per kid right now to each school. You know, I think if you look at criminal justice reform, this summer's been a hot mess. We've been raising the alarm about the racist, totally corrupt, totally overrun criminal justice system in this country for decades. We've been ahead of the curve on this. We've been talking about the policies behind it and the need to reform those. And we've gotten lackluster support from both sides for too long. You know, we're hitting a crescendo moment where people are really starting to become aware. People like me, who probably never encountered the criminal justice system before the age of information, had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. Right now, they're sitting at home, they're watching these videos. They see it now, boy. Like, this is time for us to come in and seize the day on this moment. Federalism, you know, we've been pushing for states' rights. There's a reason for that. The country is too big for us to force one agenda on people. We need to let red states make decisions. We need to let blue states make decisions. We need to have localized control. That's the only way this country is ever going to move forward and get along, is when we aren't forcing our values and beliefs on each other. And so I think we're really having a big moment. You know, corporate welfare. We've been talking about the problem of corporate welfare. Let's look at all the millions and millions of dollars that just went to the connected few while the average American has been hurting during this. You know, all of this just proves that we've been right all along. We've been predicting these things. And I think that, you know, hopefully it's a time where people are waking up to that.
Absolutely. And so Ramon, you know, following along with Alicia and Hannah, and why now is the time, and in this cultural zeitgeist moment, what is it about your particular policies and your stance on some of these issues that you think is important for Colorado? Knowing that, to Hannah's point, we believe that all states should govern themselves individually, that what people need in Colorado isn't what people need in Texas, especially in Texas. So what is it about the policies and the principles of the Libertarian Party that you think are necessary right now?
I would say, speaking with the clarity that my constituents are also speaking to, there are definitely values that people value here in Colorado. One of them, one of my biggest promotions, are legalization of marijuana. Colorado being one of the first states to legalize it, we've seen a huge influx of people move here because it was legalized, not just because, you know, they just want to smoke. I propose it. I don't smoke marijuana. So again, there's that ideology that that's the case, and it's not. But it's because it did bring more jobs. It brought more capital to the state, which creates more revenue, which allows people to, you know, live better lives. So if we legalize it on a national level, even though I know we just spoke about federalism, which helped our state, but it's still hurting others, because let's say I was to leave Colorado and I was to move to Texas. My sister actually lives there, so hopefully she's watching this too. But marijuana is not as well liked there, or how should I say, it's not legalized there, whereas here it is. And for one of our local cities here in Trinidad, I've seen more Texas license plates than I do see Colorado license plates. That's definitely an issue, because individuals from other states are really capitalizing off of another state's opportunity, which is good, but it's also because they can't capitalize it on. Enjoying this one, like what does he have to say to really get my attention? And I think that's really getting people in qualified immunity, making sure that we just hold police accountable. The word reform has been thrown around so much that it actually happens, but it's not to say that it actually changes things. You can change things, but it's not for the better. It's always for the worse. So we will always want to try to promote accountability, because when police are held accountable, guess what's going to happen? You're going to start seeing a lot less individuals, not just Blacks, but Hispanics, Asians, whites included, not to be criminalized anymore for petty or victimless crimes, as are always called.
And I love that you're speaking firsthand, Ramon, about your personal experience working for both sides of the aisle, on the Republican and the Democratic side, and then your personal experience as a Black man experiencing the policies and how they affect you. You know, we're going to take a few questions, but I want to kick it back to Alicia and each of you again then. What do you think they're going to talk about tonight? So Pence and Harris are going to go in with an agenda. Some of these issues that we've been discussing are going to be on their agenda. What do you think we can anticipate hearing from both of them? And then what do you think our audience needs to hear from the Libertarian point of view that they will not see on that stage? So Alicia, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I think that the debate will probably be mostly dominated by a couple of things that have been in the news recently. One is COVID. The second one is the stimulus and the economy. And I do think racial justice, law enforcement, Black Lives Matter, and criminal justice reform will be on there. I think we aren't going to hear much about things like foreign policy, which are usually areas that libertarians are strong on. So we might hear something about environmentalism, global warming, and things like that, because California just had its very first giga fire, which is over 1 million acres have burned over here in one fire. So I think those are the main topics we're going to hear about. I think that the contrast is going to be drawn where, the Republicans are going to claim, and I think Pence will probably do a better job at this than Trump did last week, claiming to be the law and order party that supports, policemen and the military. And that's sort of traditionally like a strength for them. I think that ironically, despite the fact she was a former prosecutor, that Kamala Harris will draw a strong claim to racial justice and criminal justice reform. I think that so when we talk about libertarians, and the best way that we can capitalize on this is we should talk. I think Spike will probably do a really good job with this, by the way. He's very well spoken, but we should talk about really not pulling punches as to the problems that we have with criminal justice in this country, and the fact that we have huge incarceration rates, and it's not acceptable for us to be living under a police state because of, quote, law and order. That when you have this huge emphasis on law and order that the Republicans are currently touting, that actually you end up with oppression, and that isn't the law. It isn't the law when the police can come in and shoot an innocent person in her bed at night because we have no knock raids and things like that. So this is where libertarians should be full-throated, because we've been saying this for decades. As far as coronavirus goes, we've had no good solutions. We've had, on the one hand, we've had a party that's been anti-science. And then on the other hand, we've had a party that believes in national mandates. I mean, there's no legal way that the federal government can nationally mandate that everybody has to wear a mask. I mean, even if it passes constitutional scrutiny, it's not okay to pass a law like that, because then you have federal troops having to enforce it throughout the country. And that's the last thing we want, is the National Guard or federal troops to be running around the country arresting everybody who doesn't wear a mask. That is not the right way to deal with this. And nobody said this, right? So this is where the libertarians can be like, we can make fun of the ridiculous positions that they take. So look, a pandemic is bad, and it has economic consequences regardless of lockdowns. We don't have to have the governors tell us not to go to restaurants. A certain percentage of people are not going to go to a restaurant in a pandemic. It's going to hurt business. So we should be talking about how we can all voluntarily together as a society decide that we are going to all wear masks and help each other out, and change some of our employment laws so people can work from home and do things that to adjust to this new reality, instead of expecting one person to fix it, or expecting a top-down decree to tell us either be oppressed with law enforcement on masks, or be oppressed with law enforcement on shutting things down, or nihilism, which is not better.
So, Hannah, what are your thoughts about the debate and what we might hear and see tonight, from Harris and from Pence, but then also, I think maybe more importantly, what won't people hear that we think we can offer?
Yeah, well, I love Alicia's point. She's so right about mask mandates and about law and order in general as a talking point. Because honestly, we have over 4,000 federal laws, not to mention thousands of others at the state and local level. Law and order means enforcing really bad laws that ruin people's lives. And a mask mandate would certainly be an extension of that. And if we want to talk about another way to get people killed, that would be one. I can just see it now. Somebody being arrested and harmed by police for not wearing a mask. So I think she's absolutely right that neither of the two parties has provided a very good pathway forward for dealing with COVID. But I certainly think you'll see that come up. I think criminal justice reform will be a major issue. This is Kamala's Achilles heel. She has a terrible track record on this issue. I think that they know that. They're going to try to hit her where it hurts. They love to tout their involvement with criminal justice reform. And to their credit, they did pass more criminal justice reform than any president in my lifetime. And so it was a small first step, but it was important. And thus far, they do really have a better track record than she does. So I think that will certainly come up, but I don't think you'll see the conversation I wish would happen, which would be a much deeper conversation about how we need to transform our justice system and how we need to repeal so many of our laws that have led to mass incarceration, and really have a reckoning with that. So that will be absent. One thing that I noticed during the presidential debate that was absent last week was the Constitution. I think it was referenced maybe once in the entire debate. I think that will happen again tonight. I think we're past the point of people really pretending to care about what the Constitution says. So I doubt that we'll hear a lot of talk about that. I don't think we'll hear much talk about free markets. That's something Republicans used to harp on quite a bit. I think that we'll hear a lot of conversations around the stimulus and what we are not going to do for people due to the economic lockdowns of the government. But I think that's about as far as it will go. I'm sure we're going to hear a good bit about Amy Coney Barrett. I think the Supreme Court is of paramount importance to the Democrats, and so they're going to get involved with that. And I think we'll talk about religious liberty, connected with Amy Coney Barrett. That's been a talking point they've hit her pretty hard on. That's something that has really angered a lot of people on the right because they feel like they are attacking Christianity. I would somewhat agree with that. And, Mike Pence is sort of the resident Christian in office. So whether or not you agree with his form of Christianity, which I certainly do not, but I think that will come up. I think they'll try to tout their record on religious liberty and on protecting Christianity in this country. So that's kind of my prediction.
Well, and we know that there's going to be certain sides on either base that will really respond well to each of these arguments. Let me see. I want to see if we have some questions from the audience. So, Ramon, give me just a minute and let me see if I can pull up some of those before we. Okay. All right. I think we have a lot of people agree with everything that y'all are sharing, which is wonderful. We want to find consensus among our own party and with the people that we're hoping to engage and attract. So Ramon, let's kick it to you. We've got just a few minutes before we're going to go live with Spike Cohen and his coverage. So Ramon, kind of closing thoughts as a current candidate, what do you think we're going to hear tonight? And then, what will people not hear that you wish they would?
So I definitely agree with Hannah and Alicia there. Pretty much all of the topics that they brought up, Amy Coney Barrett and the stimulus package, all of those arguments. Something I do think might get thrown out there, I hope it does, is the fact of transition of power between whoever's going to really be the next president of the United States. Mm-hmm. We have to address the fact that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are old. They're both 70 plus. And nothing's wrong with being older. But at this point, I think Kamala, especially her being a Black woman, the fact that everybody was excited for her to be nominated as vice president, but they weren't that excited for her to actually win the nomination. There has to be something else that is truly being looked at. Like, do they actually plan on Joe Biden dying during the presidency? Possibly. Donald Trump, also Pence becoming president, a possibility. The fact that he just had COVID, the fact that made a slight comment saying that his comments are out of character. I'm paraphrasing, but Donald Trump Jr. did mention that. So we do have to take that into consideration, that both of these individuals are older. Pence, I believe, is in his late 50s or 60s. So he's still, capable of doing the job. So him, not so much being an issue, but Donald Trump and Joe Biden not being of youth. Yeah, that transition of power, I hope that topic comes up. At least the moderator asked the question. If not, I think that should be asked. Like, what do they plan on doing?
Great. Well, everyone, I really appreciate all of your time with us here tonight. We are actually going to transition over in just a minute to the screen for Spike. But let's say, good luck to everyone who's out there running, Ramon included, and Alicia, Hannah, Ramon, tell people where they can find you. So Alicia, if people are interested in finding out more about you or interacting with you, tell us where they can find you. Same question then to Hannah and Ramon.
Well, you know what? I actually have gotten off of social media. I used to have really active Twitter and all that, and I'm not on those anymore. I am on Facebook if you want to come find me on Facebook, I'm starting up a page, so you can actually just search me on Facebook and join one of my pages or one of my groups. My name is Alicia Dearn. That's ALICIA. Dearn is spelled DEARN. And just look for me on Facebook, and that's where I'm at for the current time.
Great. Okay, Hannah, we know that you're very active. Let's tell people again where they can find you.
I'm just so envious she got off social media. Like I would love that. It'll never happen. I am at Twitter at Hannah Cox 7. I am at Facebook. I have a public page you can go to that is at Hannah Danielle Cox 7. And my Instagram is at Hannah Danielle _Cox 6, just to throw you off.
Okay. And Ramon, tell people where they can find you.
So people can find me on Facebook at Doan for Colorado. For Twitter, my last name, I should actually spell this, DOANE, and then my first name, RAYMON. So just Doan Ramon for Twitter. And my name's unique enough, so if you just type my first, I'm pretty sure you'll find it. And then for Instagram, it's going to be RAY _DONE. So definitely appreciate all those follows.
Outstanding. Thank you all so much for joining us. Stephen, can we go to the slide that says Debate Mayhem for Spike Cohen, and then click that link so that we can live stream his debate commentary? And that will be it from us. We hope that you all tune in next time. The next presidential debate is October 15th. So we'll have another slate of Liberty experts joining us to comment. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up with all of our videos. We'll do a recap of this event after we're done. And you'll also be able to watch the video that we shared here. So thank you everyone for joining us. We're gonna go live with Spike Cohen in just a minute.
Bye.
hitting interview if there ever was one.
It's
I'm sure.
It's going to be a hard hitting interview. No, I guess she and some of my other friends all started a site to educate the voters of Nashville on everybody running, and I guess you're doing an interview with them. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. We got a shout out from Brandon Cody. I'm not sure if it's Bowers or Bowers, saying that he voted for us today. Thanks so much for your support, Brandon. That means everything to me. People are now asking about the kickflip. Hey, thanks, Matt. I did one time accomplish a kickflip.
One time.
And then I tried. Now people are telling me to do one now. Because that's possible here. I don't have a skateboard. I haven't skateboarded in 20-something years. Look at our professional opponents there. Still waiting. Still not there.
I'm like trying to see if there movement. Do you see movement? Yeah, there's some movement.
Oh yeah, no, it's not frozen. I can see that there's some movement down there at the bottom. But
yeah, that was my only thing. I'm like, is there movement happening?
What if they're watching this and they're thinking, you know what? I'll just wait for the other one to come out and let Spike demolish whoever the other opponent is, thereby helping me for not going out there. I mean, listen, folks, we saw in the last debate, Joe Jorgensen won that debate, and frankly, so did every single one of you watching who have been trying to say for well over a year now that there's not really any real difference between Trump and Biden, that they both suck, that they both can't really articulate any policy changes they're going to make, that they can barely form a coherent sentence. The only thing they're really good at is insulting people and shifting blame, and that at no point are they going to acknowledge that they or their parties have worked together to create the problems that we're facing right now. And that the only way we're going to solve those problems is by to kick them out and to completely dismantle it. We might see a slightly more sophisticated version of that tonight, but I don't know.
So next Wednesday, you're going to be in Orlando?
Is that the 14th?
Yes.
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 Then yes. I will be next Wednesday on the 14th.
On the 14th.
In Orlando.
Yes.
In beautiful Orlando.
And that means that I will also be in Orlando on the 14th.
So a question, is Waffle House an official sponsor of the tour? No.
No.
But they have not given us a cease and desist.
As of yet.
As of yet. And in fact, we've actually talked to the Waffle Houses that we're going to go to, and they have encouraged us to come. So.
Nice.
There is that. Oh, good. So now, okay, so we can get started with
this.
Yeah,
Susan Page is doing her thing.
When I introduce the candidates, please welcome California Senator Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence.
And Libertarian candidate Spike Cohen.
And Spike Cohen.
And Spike Cohen. Clap for that, you stupid bastards. Thank you.
You said it, not me.
Senator Harris and Vice President Pence, thank you for being here. We're meeting as President Trump and the First Lady continue to undergo treatment in Washington after testing positive for COVID-19. We send our thoughts and prayers to them for their rapid and complete recovery and for the recovery of everyone afflicted by the coronavirus. The two campaigns and the Commission on Presidential Debates have agreed to the ground rules for tonight. I'm here to enforce them on behalf of the millions of Americans who are watching.
Yeah, you and Chris Wallace both.
No
Good
one
luck.
in either campaign or at the commission or anywhere else has been told in advance what topics I'll raise or what questions I'll ask. This 90-minute debate will be divided into 9 segments of about 10 minutes each. I'll begin a segment by posing a question to each of you, sometimes the same question, sometimes a different question on the same topic. You will then have 2 minutes to answer without interruption by me or the other candidate. Then we'll take 6 minutes or so to discuss the issue. At that point, although there will always be more to say,
Are they sitting so that they don't have to wear a mask?
Yes.
want a debate
Okay.
That was part of the rules.
But
It was going to be
Americans
sitting
also
as opposed to
deserve a
standing
discussion
because of
that
that
is
reason.
civil.
Because when you
These
stand,
are
you have to wear a
tumultuous
mask to
times,
protect you
but we
from
can
COVID.
and will have a respectful exchange about the big issues facing our nation. Let's begin with the ongoing pandemic that has cost our country so much. Senator Harris, the coronavirus is not under control. Over the past week, Johns Hopkins reports that 39 states have had more COVID cases over the past 7 days than in the week before. 9 states have set new records. Even if a vaccine is released soon, the next administration will face hard choices. What would a Biden administration do in January and February that a Trump administration wouldn't do? Would you impose new lockdowns for businesses and schools and hotspots?
I have an answer for that. They probably will continue to kick the can down the road and not acknowledge the fact that the reason that we're even facing the pandemic as badly as we are right now is because the CDC didn't allow medical professionals to test COVID patients for the first 2 months that the virus was here, which allowed it to spiral out of control. And as she just said, we are at and above record highs during lockdowns. It's almost like they didn't work. Anyway, that's really literally the answer to that.
Disease. 1 in 5 businesses closed. We're looking at frontline workers who have been treated like sacrificial workers.
By the CDC.
We are looking at over 30 million people who in the last several months had to file for unemployment. And here's the thing.
Because of the lockdowns.
On January 28th, the Vice President and the President were informed about the nature of this pandemic. They were informed that it's lethal in consequence, that it is airborne, that it will affect young people, and that it would be contracted because it is airborne.
You just said
And
airborne.
they knew what was happening, and they didn't tell
Said that
you.
would be airborne,
Can you
that it would be
imagine
airborne,
on January
and that it
28th,
would be, in fact,
as opposed to
airborne.
March 13th, what they knew, what you might have done to prepare. They
Like
knew
allowing
and
the
they covered it
CDC
up.
to allow medical professionals to
president
test
said it was
COVID
a
patients.
hoax.
By the way, go ahead and mute her real
minimize
quick.
the
The
seriousness.
reason that no one is going to talk about this, the very reason why the virus is spiraling out of control, even though this would be such an easy dunk for the Democrats to go, Donald Trump didn't allow the CDC under Donald Trump didn't allow COVID patients to be tested for 2 months. The reason she can't say that, the reason no one will say that, even though it's common knowledge, it's multiple news reports about it, everyone knows this is the case, is because it's their system too. It would have been completely the same with them. These weren't new regulations. It isn't bluster or rhetoric. It is something that has been in place for years. If Hillary Clinton had been in office, it literally would have been the same way. So you will not hear about the actual reason that and also they can't pivot and try to blame it on you wanting to live your life and not face a massive government-imposed depression. So that's the other reason they won't mention it.
Than that of almost every other wealthy nation on earth. For instance, our death rate is 2.5 times that of Canada next door. You head the administration's coronavirus task force. Why is the U.S. death toll
Wow, really?
as a percentage of our population higher than that of almost every other wealthy country? And you have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Susan, thank
CDC
you.
didn't test
And
anyone.
I want to thank the
Didn't allow
Commission and
testing.
the University of Utah for hosting this event. And Senator Harris, it's a privilege to be on the stage with you. Our nation has gone through a very challenging time this year. But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President
didn't allow
Donald Trump has
testing.
put the health of America first. Before there were more than 5 cases in the United States, all people who had returned from China, President Donald Trump did what no other American president had ever done. And that was he suspended all travel from China, the second
It was
largest
already too late. It
economy
was already
in the
here,
world.
and they weren't allowing it to be tested, so it spread out
Senator
of control.
Joe Biden opposed that decision. He said it was xenophobic and hysterical. But I can tell you, having led the White House Coronavirus Task Force, that decision alone by President Trump bought us invaluable time to stand up the greatest national mobilization since World War II.
What would have bought us
And I
time
believe
was
it saved
testing
hundreds
patients.
of thousands of American lives. Because with that time, we were able to reinvent testing. More than 115 million tests have been done.
Reinvent. You have to mute
We
him.
were able to see the-
Reinventing testing. What that meant was that they tried to reinvent the wheel. There were already American companies that were making approved COVID-19 test kits by the millions, and the CDC said, "Nope, you can't sell them here. You got to sell them overseas. We're going to make our own, and it's going to be even better than anything you've ever made." About 2 months later, they went, well, it turns out we suck at making test kits, so just go ahead and start selling them here. But not all of them. We're only going to approve about 2 or 3 of them. And now I think we're up to like 5 or 6 different types out of the dozens that are being made here. Still, many of them are still only being sold overseas because they aren't legal to use here, usually because they don't automatically report to the government. So it had nothing to do, once it was here, once one person had it here, this highly virulent pathogen that spreads very, very easily, and as Kamala Harris has said 7 times already, is airborne, which airborne is relative, but it does spread easily. It can spread asymptomatically. As a result of that, once it's already here, it doesn't matter. You can shut off all travel from any country on earth. It doesn't matter. It's already here. If you're not testing patients, it's going to spread out of control, especially since a good number of the people that get it don't ever have any symptoms. They have it. They spread it. They never have so much as a sniffle, and then it's gone out of their system and they have it for weeks that way. Go ahead and go to this, whatever they're known.
Real quick, let's give a quick shout out to the Travis County Libertarian Party who is watching us right now.
Shout out to Travis County.
Travis County, yeah. Thank you for watching.
Travis County.
Travis County. I think that's in Texas. Travis County, Texas.
Well, why didn't y'all tell anybody? He said because the president wanted people to remain calm.
Well, let's get.
No, but Susan, this is important.
Susan,
I want to add. But if
Here we
Mr.
go.
Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
Yeah, you can
So
have
I
15 more seconds, and then we'll give the vice president a chance to
So I
respond.
want to ask the American people, how calm were you when you were panicked about where you're going to get your next roll of toilet paper? How calm were you when your kids were sent home from school and you didn't know when they could go back?
Supply
How
chain
calm were
issues
you
related to the
when your
lockdown and the
children
government
couldn't see your
restrictions of it.
parents because
They are
you were
blaming
afraid they could kill
COVID
them?
for toilet paper
Let's give
issues.
Vice President Pence a chance to respond. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute to
You
respond.
know, there's not a day gone by that I haven't thought of every American family that's lost a loved one.
Saying that their jobs are still being made difficult in trying to test and contain this virus, because it turns out that our massive federal bureaucracy for healthcare that drives up the cost of healthcare and makes it where you can't even find out how much your services cost for weeks or months also isn't a great way to deal with a pandemic.
For the sacrifices that they have made, putting the health of their family and their neighbors first, our doctors, our nurses, our first
Thank you, Vice
responders.
President Pence.
And I'm going to speak up on behalf of what the American people have done.
Vice President Pence, you were in the front row in a Rose Garden event 11 days ago at what seems to have been a super spreader event for senior administration and congressional officials. No social distancing, few masks, and now a cluster of coronavirus cases among those who were there. How can you expect Americans to follow the administration's safety guidelines to protect themselves from COVID when you at the White House have not been doing so?
How dare you insult the American people when they, whatever you just said.
That when given the facts, they're willing to put the health of their families and their neighbors and people they don't even know first. President Trump and I have great confidence in the American people and their ability to take that information and put it into practice. In the height of the epidemic, when we were losing a heartbreaking number of 2,500 Americans a day, we surged resources to New Jersey and New York.
During our super spreader event, we did not allow a single Chinese person into it, thereby saving the lives of
When the outbreak of
potentially
the Sun Belt
millions.
happened this summer, again, Americans stepped forward. But the reality is the work of the President of the United States goes on. A vacancy on the Supreme Court of the United States has come upon us, and the President introduced Judge Amy Coney Barrett.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you, Vice
But
President
at that,
Pence.
if I may say, that Rose Garden event,
Wow, no wonder they don't ever let them talk.
Right.
My wife
Goodness.
and I were there and honored to be there. Many of the people
Holy
who were
hell.
at that event, Susan, actually were tested
Man, I wish I
for
was up there right
coronavirus.
now. This would be
It
brutal.
was an outdoor event, which all of our scientists regularly and routinely advise. The difference here is President Trump and I trust the American people to make choices
we
in
go.
the best interest of
He
their
trusted the
health.
American people so
Joe
much that
Biden
he didn't allow medical professionals to test
consistently talked
COVID
about
patients,
mandates,
which Hillary
not
also would
just
not have done.
mandates with the coronavirus, but a government takeover of health care,
Thank you. Thank
the
you, Vice
Green New
President.
Deal, all government
gosh.
control. We're about freedom and respecting the freedom of the American people.
Let's talk about respecting the American people. You respect the American people when you tell them the truth. You respect the American people when you have the courage
Which we've
to be a
always
leader,
done.
speaking of those things that you may not want people to hear, but they need to hear so they can protect themselves.
So if Kamala Harris is going to talk about respecting the American people, this is a woman who fought to keep nonviolent criminals in jail so she could keep them as free labor. She withheld evidence from an innocent man who was on death row.
Two men.
Two
innocent men.
Two
innocent men.
In order to make sure that they would stay on death row, as opposed to, letting them go free as they should have been. And she wants to talk about respecting American people. Her time as the top cop of her district proves that she does not respect the people.
Not even remotely.
Not even a little bit.
Again, these two will be at their best when they are saying how terrible the other one is. You never hear a better broken clock moment for a Republican when they're saying how terrible another Republican is. That's the only good that you're going to get out of them in terms of honesty.
If the Trump administration approves a vaccine before or after the election, should Americans take it, and would you take it?
No.
If the public health professionals, if Dr. Fauci, if
I gotta turn captions off. That's annoying.
That we should take it, I'll be
Yeah,
the
that
first
is
in line to
incredibly
take it.
annoying.
Absolutely. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
Vice President Pence, there have been a lot of repercussions from this pandemic. In recent days, the president's diagnosis of COVID-19 has underscored the importance of the job that you hold and that you are seeking. That's our second topic tonight. It's the role of the vice president. One of you will make history on January 20th. You will be the vice president to the oldest president the United States has ever had. Donald Trump will be 74 years old on Inauguration Day. Joe Biden will be 78 years old. That already has raised concerns among some voters, concerns that have been sharpened by President Trump's hospitalization in recent days. Vice President Pence, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with President Trump about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes without interruption.
Is there a situation in which Mike Pence could talk about this and Donald Trump would blast him on Twitter for suggesting that he can't be president for the next 30 years?
Right.
We're going to have a vaccine, Senator, in record time, in unheard of time, in less than a year. We have 5 companies in phase 3 clinical trials, and we're right now producing tens of millions of doses. So the fact that you continue to undermine public confidence in a vaccine, if the
I love that
vaccine
Democrats
emerges
have
during
become
Trump
mildly
administration, I think
anti-vax during
is
this.
unconscionable.
It's a
And
very
Senator, I just
interesting
ask
look,
you,
and I'm
stop
I
playing
am
politics with people's lives.
all at Twitter about it.
The reality is that we will have a vaccine, we believe, before the end of this year. And it will have the capacity to save countless American lives. And
not how-
your continuous undermining of confidence in a vaccine is just, it's just unacceptable. And
You
let me
need
also
at
say,
least several months
the
of safety
reality is when you
profile.
talk about-
At best,
about
it'll be in
failure
the
in
next
this
within the next year from now.
we actually do know what failure looks like in a pandemic. It was 2009. The swine flu arrived in the United States. Thankfully, it ended up not being as lethal as the coronavirus. But before the end of the year, when Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, not 7.5 million people contracted the swine flu. 60 million Americans contracted the swine flu. If the swine flu had been as lethal as the coronavirus, in 2009, when Joe Biden was vice president, we would have lost 2 million American lives. His own chief of staff, Ron Klain,
But it wasn't.
would say last year,
This is the weirdest flex I've ever seen before.
quote,
This would be like saying Ebola came to America and it had a 50% death rate. If it had spread as much as this one had, half of Americans would be dead now. Like, what is that even? What a really, I'd be laughing too. What a
Right.
weird thing. By the way, shout out to Lori Hughes for the 99-cent super chat donation on YouTube. Lori Hughes!
Trump did the same thing in the debate against Biden, where he brought up the swine flu and started talking. And I was like, this is the weirdest flex ever.
Like, it's just a really, really weird. Remember that time that virus that didn't kill a whole lot of people? It was actually like about as deadly as a cold, or it was actually less deadly than the flu, the regular flu. Yeah, how about that, huh?
Right.
For you.
Asking me to serve with him on this ticket was probably one of the most memorable days of my life.
Oh, that's another question I would ask her is,
I thought
do
about my
you still believe what you said last year when you said that you believe Joe Biden's accusers that he sexually assaulted them? And if so, is it that you don't believe that matters and that we should be actively electing sexual assaulters to the office of president, or were you lying? Or did some other evidence come to light that you refused to release to the public, which you have a history of doing?
About the value and the dignity of public service.
Oh, shout out to Leonard Probasco, who has donated $5 on the YouTube Super Chat. Leonard Probasco!
Being elected the first woman district attorney of San Francisco, where I created models of innovation for law enforcement in terms of reform of the criminal justice system. I was elected the first woman of color and black woman to be elected Attorney General of the state of California, where I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States.
We are aware of your time in the Department of Justice.
And there I took on everything from transnational criminal organizations.
Her bringing up her past as a district attorney is like that opens the door for everything else.
It's incredible. Well, but here's the thing. Mike Pence will not flank her from a criminal justice standpoint. This is where I'm needed, because he won't do that. He'll say, you're a mamby-pamby liberal who doesn't care about law and order against the violent anarchist forces of Antifa communism, or whatever he's going to say. But he can't flank her from that. He can't bring up her criminal justice record, because they are all about the police can never do anything wrong. Prosecutors can never do anything wrong. So I don't think it's going to happen. By the way, shout out to Dave Davis and Uhana Roderick for their $4.99 donations on YouTube. Dave Davis, Uhana Roderick.
The modern norm until the 2016 election. And in recent days, President Trump's doctors have given misleading answers or refused to answer basic questions about his health. And my question to each of you in turn is this information voters deserve to know? Vice President Pence, would you like to go first?
Well, Susan, thank you. And
shout out to Lori Hughes.
Let me say,
$20 U.S.
on behalf of the
donation.
President,
Thank you so much, Lori. Lori Hughes, we'll see you in Savannah. I can't wait to see you.
We've all been by the outpouring of prayers and concern for the President.
Did not even remotely prepare for this, did he?
And I do believe it's emblematic of the prayers and the concern that have ushered forth for every American impacted by the coronavirus. But the care the President received at Walter Reed Hospital, the White House doctors, was exceptional. And the transparency that they practiced all along the way
Better than
will
Americans
continue.
would get, yeah.
American people have a right to know about the health and well-being of their president, and will continue to do that. But I'm just extremely grateful, and was more than a little moved by the broad and bipartisan support. And Senator, I want to thank you and Joe Biden for your expressions of genuine concern. And I also want to congratulate you, as I did on that phone call, on the historic nature of your nomination. I never expected to be on this stage 4 years ago.
Wow.
So I know the
So
feeling.
this is all nonsense. So shout out to Meg Jones, $10 donation in memory of Shannon Jones. Thank you so much for your donation, and definitely rest in peace to Shannon. D Regular Guy made a $4.20 donation. Nice.
I see what you did there.
I see what you did. You did a thing, and I saw it. We both did. And Antonio Andrade for his $5 donation. Abolish the ATF. Absolutely. That's what we're here for. Shout out to Edward Ramon. I hope I'm saying that right, or Ramon, for his $4.99 donation. Hashtag Spike the Debates. Mike Lee. Shout out to Mike Lee for his $1 donation. Mike Lee.
And Greg Gibbs. Thank you for your $4.99 donation.
Thank you, Greg.
We now know Donald Trump owes and is in debt for $400 million. And just so everyone is clear, when we say in debt, it means you owe money to somebody. And it'd be really good to know who the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, owes money to, because the American people have a right to know what is influencing the president's decisions, and is he making those
cronies who
decisions
put him
on
in
the
office,
best
same
interest
as
of
you.
the American
Right.
people, of you?
I mean, I thought we all knew that.
Or self-interest. So, Susan, I'm glad you asked about transparency, because
Why?
it has to be across the board. Joe has been incredibly transparent.
You know what's
over
really like a
many, many
transparent
years.
thing would be like,
The
for
one thing
example,
we all
if
know about Joe,
you were trying
he
to have
puts it
someone
all out
executed
there.
for murder and you had
is
evidence that
honest,
they
he
didn't
is
do it, that
forthright,
you would be transparent
but
about that
Donald
and maybe
Trump, on the
stop
other
trying
hand,
to
has
have
been
them
about
executed.
covering up everything.
Or if you
Thank
had
you,
a
Senator Harris.
vested
I wanna give
financial
you a chance to
interest in
respond.
keeping
Well, look, I
lots
respect
of
the fact
people in
that,
prison for
Joe
victimless
Biden spent
crimes
47 years
where
in
they
public
would
life. I respect
go
your
on to do slave
public
labor
service as well.
for prison contractors,
The American people have a
you would be transparent about that. We got some more shout outs here. Shout out to Alex Boyer for his $2 donation. I am going to go buy myself a Sody Pop after this. Thank you. Shout out to Adam Weggs for his $1 donation. Adam, love you, man. Jay Norton for a $20 donation. The Libertarian Armed Bear Caucus loves Mystery Science Debate Theater. Jay, if there is a Facebook group for the Libertarian Armed Bear Caucus, please send us an invite. I definitely need to be a part of that. Shout out to Alan Mendizi for his $7 donation. Thank you so much.
Turn to this economy around by cutting taxes, rolling back regulation.
Thank you,
unleashing
Vice
American
President.
There are
fighting for
more
free and
regulations
fair
now
trade,
than there were when you
and
came into
all of
office,
that's
and
being
the
done
average
with Joe
tax
Biden
burden of the average
and
American
Kamala
family,
Harris.
thanks to your
good
war
segue into
on
our
trade,
third
is
topic,
23%
which
higher
is
than it
about
was when you came into office.
This has
So that's
been
all.
another aspect of life for Americans. It's been so affected by this coronavirus. We have a jobs crisis brewing. On Friday, we
Because of
learned
the
that the
lockdowns.
unemployment rate had declined to 7.9% in September, but the job growth had stalled, and that was before the latest round of layoffs and furloughs in the airline industry at Disney and elsewhere.
The airlines who were given trillions of dollars in your money in exchange for not firing people or furloughing them are now doing that and experiencing record profits, which is why we are in the worst recession of our lifetimes while stock prices are at and above all-time highs. Anyone who says that they want a system whereby we are not robbed to make the rich even richer should not be voting Republican or Democrat ever. Got some more shout outs here. Natasha Farver, a shout out for your $2.99 donation. Hands doing the sign of the horns with sparkles around. What the hell?
It's they're emojis that we don't see on here.
What? I agree. Hands doing the sign of the horns with the sparkles around. Judith Reuter, $5 donation. Wish you were there. I do too, Judith. Thank you. I think we know what would happen right now. Raymond Manis, $4.99 donation. All the best on the run, Spike. Thank you so much, Raymond. Another one from Adam Wakes, $2. Love you too, Spike. Love you too, man. Mike Rafferty, $20. Hashtag let them speak, cowards. You know, listen, we're seeing right now why they wouldn't. I mean, can you imagine this mess? Let's see. Rob Z, $19.99 donation on behalf of Jennifer O'Connor, Country Over Party. Absolutely, man. Natalie Bruno, $50 donation, $49.99 donation. So glad to be on the team. Hashtag vote rolled. Man, Natalie, thank you so much. Greenfield Baggett, $5 donation. Shout out to Greenfield. John Grady, $25 donation. Check out The Patriot, The Philosopher, and The Madman on Amazon. I've been told that a couple of times, John. Thank you. Amanda Fott, $50 donation. See you in the Woodlands with some smoke. Say, oh, I will be your best friend. Let me tell you something, Amanda. I will imprint on you if you bring me soaked salmon to the Woodlands. Kayla Phillips, $5 donation. Thank you so much, Kayla. This debate is. I didn't anticipate giving shout outs to everyone on the
right.
All right, let's go back to this nonsense.
For example, for folks who want to go to a 2-year community college, it will be free. If you come from a family that makes less than $125,000, you'll go to a public university for free. And across the board, we'll make sure that if you have student loan debt, it's cut by $10,000. That's how Joe Biden thinks about
what is
the economy, which
$10,000? First of all, when you owe a debt to the federal government, that's an illegitimate debt and you should know it. First of all, so write that down. Second of all, when it comes to higher education, it's government that drove up the cost. If government wasn't involved in deciding what the cost was, they'd have to charge you what you could afford, and the lenders would only give you what they thought you'd actually be able to pay back based on the expected income from that. Federal government involvement is why the cost of healthcare, or well, healthcare too, but why higher education is so expensive in the first place. Get the government out of it and allow the price equilibrium to come in, and Americans will be able to afford it. Also, stop pimping 4-year two-year schools. There are trade schools where you can immediately start making more money. 2-year schools, 2 and 3-year schools, sometimes 1-year schools that are trade schools, and also get rid of occupational licensing. There are a lot of things that you shouldn't have to go to school. What was it, 6 years to be an interior decorator in Florida or something like that, Matt?
6 years. 6 years plus 2 internship.
Some states 3 years to braid hair. This is utter nonsense. Let's do some shout outs. These people are idiots. I don't want to talk about, I'd rather talk about our amazing fans here. Barrett Elijah, $5 donation. Big love from Hawaiian Shirt Enthusiasts. Hawaiian Shirt, Igloo Time. Tara Leach, $5 donation. And Duopoly, we're working on it. Tara, thank you so much. Joel Getz, $4.99 donation. Spike and myself are the only real libertarians. Great meeting you in Wilkes-Barre. Hey, listen, Joel, the minute that you say that you are a real libertarian, you're actually technically not a real libertarian. But it was great meeting you in Pennsylvania. Leonard Probosco, another $4. Leonard, help us, Mama Joe, you're our only hope. Thank you, Leonard. GenoTube Live, $4.99 donation. Shout out to GenoTube. Melissa Team, $5 donation. Hashtag Spike the Debates. Spike the Debates. Hashtag Spike the Debates. Irvin Sabick, $100 donation. Go get it. Thanks so much, Irvin.
Thank you so much, Irvin.
Kyle Schroyer, $5 donation. And the duopoly, let's fix the country. Absolutely, Kyle. Thank you so much. Let's go back to the nonsense.
Took office, half of our international trade deficit was with China alone. And Joe Biden wants to repeal all of the tariffs that President Trump put into effect to fight for American jobs and American workers.
There are Americans who have lost jobs and farmers who now live on welfare where they used to be farmers who farmed things because of the war on trade. All you do is get rid of the regulations that drive up the cost of doing business in America and hiring in Americans, and all those jobs will come back. I already argued with Chris Taylor Brown's toaster about this. We already acknowledged what the problem is here. I will argue with Mike Pence's toaster next if I have to. Or Kamala Harris's hairdryer, really whatever appliance they want me to argue with, I will do it, and I will win, my God. Shout out to Mrs. Rogers for the $20 donation. We met at Anarcon in Virginia. Prison Families for Joe and Spike. I remember you. Thank you so much. You're doing great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Rebecca Penglass, $5 donation. Hashtag Spike Not Mike. Spike Pence in real time. Leslie Knowles, $4.99 donation. Thank you so much, Leslie. I will be there on Saturday with my dad in Atlanta. I'm excited. I'm excited too, Leslie. I can't wait to meet you. Thank you so much. Saturday the 10th. Come on out. The Shabbat miracle in Atlanta. Go ahead.
Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden is the one who, during the Great Recession, was responsible for the Recovery
the 1994
Act
crime
that
bill.
brought America back. And now the Trump-Pence administration wants to take credit when they rode the coattails of Joe Biden's success for the economy that they had at the beginning of their term. Of course, now the economy is a complete disaster. But Joe Biden, on the one hand, did that. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump.
It was on its way to being a disaster because of the Austrian business cycle. Could tell you decades long before any of us were born why it would, because of the Federal Reserve policy of Republicans and Democrats. But it's especially bad now because of the lockdowns. The coronavirus did not attack businesses. It was a virus that spread because the government didn't allow medical professionals to do their job. And then also, again, then they locked everything down, and it has not stopped spreading.
You have Donald Trump, who's in court right now.
Shout out to Rob Dye for his $50 donation. He said, hoping to see you in the White House, Mike. I would love that very much, Rob. Thank you so much.
This is very important, Susan.
Yes,
and it's
we need to give Vice President.
I'd just like to, he interrupted me, and I'd like to just finish, please. If you have a pre-existing condition, heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, they're coming for you. If you love someone who has a
by they, she means Big Pharma that enjoys Republican and Democrat patent protections and charges you 10 and 100,000 times what they charge in any other country for drugs that have been generic for decades. But they can charge a fortune here because of the system that they have. That's I'm sure that's
well. President Trump and I have a plan to improve health care and to protect pre-existing conditions for every American. But look, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. You yourself said on multiple occasions when you were running for president.
Did you
that
say
you
you're
would
lying?
ban fracking.
She said good line.
Joe Biden looked
Oh,
a
good
supporter
line.
in the eye and pointed and said, I guarantee that we will abolish fossil fuels. They have a $2 trillion version of the Green New Deal, Susan, that your newspaper, USA Today, said really wasn't that very
Well, if we're talking
different from the
about
original
fossil
Green
fuel,
New Deal.
Joe's plan to
More taxes,
deregulate
more
and
regulation,
end the subsidies to
banning
fossil
fracking,
fuels and to
abolishing fossil
unproven
fuels,
and not ready for prime time renewables, and instead deregulate the market so that we can use nuclear in the meantime, which has zero carbon footprint and is the cheapest form of cheapest, most plentiful, and safest form statistically of energy available, which will also allow the renewable market to skyrocket, because what renewables need for development is A, for government to stop subsidizing bad providers of renewables, and B, for energy to be so cheap and plentiful for them to do the kind of research they need to do to research the next generation of truly renewable things. That is Joe Jorgensen's plan for energy. It does not involve absurd rhetoric about taxing cow flatulence or of threatening to bankrupt entire industries, which is sort of a Republican favorite. Shout outs to Caleb Persinger for $49.99 donation. So glad I found this campaign. I'm so tired of the Republican nonsense. Hashtag vote gold. Shout out to Jen McNorris for her $20.46 donation. I'm certain there's a symbolism there. Shout out to who should be debating the Spike Man 2020 46. Oh,
The 46th president.
Oh, 46 VP. Shout out to Raymond Manis, $2.99 US. Hashtag make it the Gold House 2020. Waffle House. Hashtag, shout out to Governor Nicholas Wildstar for $5 donation. Good to see you, man. Shout out to Samantha Finch for $5 donation. Jonathan Reels and I are coming to see you in Birmingham. I love it. I cannot wait for that. Looking forward to Waffle House. I am looking forward to that too. Angela Hatcher. Shout out to her for her $17.89 donation. She says, freedom! Isaac Gross, shout out, $24.99 donation. You should be on that stage, hashtag vote gold. We see what's happening. We see why I'm not on the stage. Same reason Joe wasn't on the stage, because we would instantly win. It would be an instant win with possible flawless victory. Christina Page, $50 donation. In memory of David Jackson Page, first killed by police and then victimized again by qualified immunity. Absolutely.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Christina. And thank you so much for that donation. Shout out to Joel Getz, $4.99 donation. Please tell Bonnie that you agree that turkey bacon is disgraceful to the name of bacon. Listen. Turkey bacon is a victimless crime. Okay?
That doesn't mean that it is not a disgrace to the name of bacon.
It's not bacon.
It's not bacon.
It's not bacon. It isn't bacon.
Right.
I, as a Jew, am in fact a bacon expert. And turkey bacon is not bacon. Beef bacon is in fact bacon. Turkey bacon, not bacon. Pam Tringolf, shout out for your $4.99 donation. Logical people for the United States of America. We need to start somewhere. Absolutely, Pam. Shout out to Mel Magnuson, $17.76 donation. Joe Spike to restore freedom and liberty in this country. Absolutely. Trisha Good, shout out to you for a $19.99 donation. Loved meeting you in Des Moines. Yeah, Trisha, it was great meeting you. Thank you so much for coming out. Governor Wildstar, another $5. Hashtag throw your vote away. Hashtag vote libertarian Joe J 2020. Hashtag to or shout out to TJ Norman, $1.99 donation. He asked, how do you plan on getting media coverage? We have to make our own coverage. We have to be bold. We have to get around the media. We have to do our own video ad placement on streaming sites. We have to do stuff like this. We can't rely on the media. The media will do everything they can to shut us out. We have more support than any other libertarian ticket before, and they're doing everything they can to pretend we don't exist precisely for that reason. They are horrified at what will happen if we get the attention that we have earned. Shout out to Brett Kernbeck for a $19.99 donation. Thank you for truly fighting for the preservation of liberty, Spike. So refreshing to hear a person in a presidential race finally pushing trade schools like I'm very happy that I graduated from. Thank you, man. Hashtag shout out to Lupe Gonzalez. Hey, Lupe, thank you for tuning in. $4.99, or actually Lupe McDougal now, technically. $4.99 donation. Hashtag shout out to Chris Cole, $5 for victims of family law for Spike Cohen and the family law industry and the absolute immunity for judges. Let's get our kids back. Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for your support. Great seeing you in North Carolina. Let's get back to this nonsense.
That the west coast of our country is burning, including my home state of California.
Because
Joe
of bad
sees what
forest
is
management
happening
policies.
on the Gulf states, which are being battered by storms. Joe has
That's
seen and talked
storms
with the
exist.
farmers in Iowa whose entire crops have been destroyed because of floods. And so Joe believes, again, in science. I'll tell you something, Susan. I served, when I first got to the Senate, on the committee that's responsible for the environment. Do you know this administration took the word science off the website?
Any energy or climate change plan that does not completely centered around nuclear energy, which is the cheapest, safest, most plentiful, most sustainable, and also zero carbon footprint. Any conversation about climate change or the environment or energy that is not centered around nuclear energy is an intentionally useless conversation. This has nothing to do, if they wanted to truly stop climate change, they would embrace deregulating so that nuclear energy would not be prohibitively expensive to get involved in. The only reason we don't see new nuclear plants in this country is because they have regulated them into being prohibitively expensive to building and maintaining any new ones, period. That's the reason we don't have them. And they are doing that intentionally because they want you to have to pay more for energy to benefit the cronies that put them in office. They also want to keep this specter of climate change over you and this fear of it happening. They know that they could stop this dead in its tracks by deregulating and allowing for more nuclear energy, and also deregulating would allow for more products to be made here instead of on the other side of the planet and shipped all the way back here, which would greatly reduce the carbon footprint of our consumption. So the fact that they're not talking about those things tells you that they have no serious intention of dealing with this. They just want to scare it. Let's see. Shout out to Andrew K, $20.20 donation. Great meeting you tonight in Dover. Hey man, thanks so much for coming out. Amber, I'm gonna have to unfortunately shorten what I'm reading from these messages just so we can actually get back to the debate. Shout out to Amber, $5 donation. Can't wait to meet you Friday in North Carolina. Absolutely. Shout out to Dara Widu for $10 donation. First time voting for a presidential election. Excited to be voting for you guys. Thanks, man. Or thanks. I shouldn't gender you. Thank you, Dara Widu. Eric Granada, $4.99 donation. Thank you so much. Victims of Family Law. Carol Baker, shout out to you for your $19.99 donation. Hashtag spike the vote. Hashtag a bunch of other hashtags I really love. Thank you, Carol. Thank you so much. All right, let's go back to the absurdity.
We don't need a massive $2 trillion Green New Deal that would impose
We just need
all
nuclear
new mandates
energy.
on American
We just need nuclear
businesses
energy.
and American families.
Thank you.
Joe Biden wants us
Thank
to
you, Vice
retrofit
Say
4
nuclear.
million
Thank you, Vice
American
President.
business buildings. It makes no sense. It will cost
Nuclear.
jobs. President Trump
Thank
is
you,
going to
Vice
put
President.
America first.
Nuclear.
He's going to put jobs first, and we're going to take care of our environment and follow the science.
Nuclear.
You know, on the issue of jobs,
Senator Harris.
let's talk about
Nope,
that.
nuclear.
The vice president earlier referred to, as part of what he thinks is an accomplishment, the president's trade war with China. You lost that trade war. You lost it.
Their trade wars
What
aren't
ended
won
up
and lost.
happening
Everyone loses. The consumer
because of
loses.
a
Government
so-called
wins by
trade
getting a
war
bunch
with
of new
China.
people that are relying on them
America
because they
lost
destroyed their
300,000
economy and they get a bunch of
manufacturing
revenue from it. There are no winners and
Farmers
losers in trade
have
wars except the
experienced
governments of the
bankruptcy
respective countries
because of it.
engaging in
We are
them,
in a
and the losers are
manufacturing
literally
recession
everyone else.
because of
Shout out to Noah Lindgren,
And
$14.99
when we
donation. I
look
came
at
around to
where
YouTube just to
this
give some money.
administration
Hey,
has been,
thanks. Fernando
there are
Rivas,
estimates that by the end of the
$4.20
term
donation.
of this
Ken Bode did
administration,
nothing wrong.
they
Matt,
will
did you know
have
Ken Bode voted for us?
lost more
I did.
jobs
I knew that.
than
I
any
retweeted
other
that.
presidential
Welcome to the
administration.
Bone Zone.
And the American people know what I'm
Amanda
talking
Ford,
about. You
shout
know-
out to you for
I
your
think
$10
about
donation.
20-year-olds.
Pair
You know, we
character
have
jumping up and
20-year-olds.
down
I
saying
think
number
it's
one fan.
20-something-year-old
Hey,
who are
thanks,
coming
pair
out of high
character.
school and college right now, and
Daniel
you're
M,
wondering,
shout
is
out
there
to
gonna be a
Daniel
job
for the
there
$2
for me?
donation. Quit calling out the amount of
Looking at
donations.
people who are trying to figure out how they're going to pay.
Am I not
rent
supposed
by
to do
the end
that?
of the month.
No.
Almost half of American renters are
Oh.
worried about
You're
whether
just supposed to
they're gonna
get
be able
like
to
say
pay
thanks.
rent by the end of the month.
But
This
doesn't that,
is
like,
where the
encourage
economy
more?
is in America right now, and it is because of the
I don't know.
catastrophe and the failure of leadership of this administration.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you just 15 seconds to respond because then I want to move on.
Well, I'd love to respond. Look, lost the trade war with China. Joe Biden never fought it. Joe Biden has been a cheerleader for communist China over the last several decades. And again, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. When Joe Biden was vice president, we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs.
Because of regulations that caused that to happen, and they've continued to lose jobs to China and other countries during the Trump administration because of regulations. It has nothing to do with the trade war. If you drive up the cost of living in the U.S., that just makes it worse. If you tell the average American we're going to increase your cost of living by 23% with tariffs, then you're not actually helping them. You're making them lose their jobs, become reliant on welfare, and the cost of living goes up.
I just need to respond very briefly.
15 seconds.
Thank you. Joe Biden is responsible for saving America's auto industry, and you voted against it. So let's set the record straight. Thank you.
America's auto industry continues to fail because of legacy costs related to mandated legacy labor costs, which is making it, again, increasingly unaffordable to make durable goods in the U.S. At the current rate, none of this stuff will be made in America in another few years. And it will only get worse as they continue to increase tariffs. That just caused the supply chain costs to continue to go up for businesses that are still here, that are having to import stuff into the U.S. So that will only get worse. Shout out to Jennifer Abernathy. I'm going to keep saying the amounts. $11.11 donation in honor of Madison Kingston Robeson. Hashtag justice for Madi and for all recovering Democrats. Thank you, Jennifer. And shout out to Derek Rhodes, $5 donation. Shout out to Rachel for your $5 donation. Rachel Watson, knock knock, who's there? Joe Mama for president. I like that. Jesus De La Torre, shout out for your 1776 donation. First ever campaign donation, because I want to shout out, and voting gold is the American thing to do. Thank you so much.
It was a huge win for American auto workers. It was a huge win for American farmers, especially dairy in the upper Midwest. But Senator, you said it didn't go far enough on climate change, that you put your radical environmental agenda ahead of American auto workers and ahead of American jobs.
Like literally, this is why nothing ever gets accomplished, is because they have to use their weird rhetoric against each other. That's not solutions oriented. It's create division oriented. So if we talk about, for example, they're talking about jobs and they're talking about the environment, and instead of saying the reason why jobs are as bad as they are here is because of the regulations that are driving up the cost of doing business in America and hiring Americans. And if we get rid of those, things will get better. And the reason that we have so many environmental issues is because of regulations that have increasingly made it unaffordable to provide clean forms of energy or for smaller competitors to compete with larger, more polluting companies. Instead, the Democrat says, you don't care about science. And the Republican says, you don't care about auto workers. You just want to pass your extreme Democrat agenda. It's all nonsense. It's all hysterical rhetoric that is designed to keep everyone nice and divided instead of actually focusing on what the problem is, how to solve the problem, because how to solve the problem is never having to look at these two again and replacing them with people who understand what the actual issue is.
China, we're going to continue to stand strong.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
We want to improve the relationship, but we're going to level the playing field, and we're going to hold China accountable for what they did to America.
You have destroyed the playing field. You and her
Senator
and
Harris,
your parties
I'm gonna ask
have
you the
completely
same
eliminated the
question
playing field.
that I asked the Vice President. How would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Are we competitors, adversaries, enemies? You'll have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
China's a client
Susan,
state. China is a
Trump
client state of U.S. crony
administration's
businesses who have put
perspective
these two in office
to
and their
China
parties
has
in office
resulted in the
to
loss of
create
American
regulations and
lives,
laws that make it
American
increasingly unaffordable
jobs,
to do business in America and
America's
hire Americans, which necessarily leads to larger companies
There's a
just
weird
moving their bases of
obsession that
operation
President
overseas
Trump has
because
had
they're the only ones that can
with
afford to
getting
do
rid
that.
of
They
whatever
leave this place as a wasteland for anyone who would want to compete with them, and they move all the
President
jobs over
Obama
there
and Vice
and just bring them back. Oh, and also they use the
created
military
within
to
the White
protect
House
their
an
goods
office
as they're being
that
shipped back
basically
into the
was
U.S.
responsible for
So here you have it,
monitoring
where they have robbed you
They
of
got
your
away
ability
with
to
it. They got rid
thrive,
of it.
and then use every bit of
There
taxpayer service that
was
you're
a
paying
team
for
of
to
disease
externalize all of their
experts
major costs,
that
including the cost
President
of
Obama
protecting their
and Vice
shipments all the way
President
back
Biden
here from
dispatched
pirates and bad actors. So at every single
monitor
step, you are
what
being screwed
is
over
now
by
predictable
big
and
business
what might
cronies
happen.
who
They pulled
own
them out.
both of these people that you are
We
watching
now
right
are
now.
looking
That is why I'm not on the the debate stage right now. That is why Joe was not on the debate stage with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, because it would be very, very, very easy for us to simply sit here in between these two, arguing over which one sucks worse. And then every once in a while, I could raise my hand and say, I agree, you're both terrible. Here are the policies that you've passed and implemented and executed that have led to the bad things we're facing. Here is how we undo them, and both of you have to go.
War.
That is why we're not on that stage.
And let's
right
talk about standing. Pew, a reputable research firm, has done an analysis that shows that leaders of all of our formerly allied countries have now decided that they hold in greater esteem and respect
Hashtag to Justico Mitchell, who's the guy on the left. That's guy on the left. Shout out to Melissa Harmer. Hashtag Vote Gold. Shout out to Mia Lewis. Hope to see you tomorrow and get my Waffle House mug signed. Absolutely, Mia. Shout out to Teresa Dobson. I hope you plan on running as president in the future.
In the role of the United States
in
terms of leadership.
Brett, shout out to Brett Scharnhorst. Jaws, him and I served together in the Navy on the same ship. Please come to Chicago soon. I was in Chicago a couple months ago. I will try to get there as soon as possible. Shout out to Lowell's. It's Dave. Hashtag Vote Gold 2020. Hashtag Spike to Vote. Shout out to Chairman Mike Connor Jr. We're working it in Iowa for Spike. Keep representing Chairman Mike. Shout out to Chairman Mike, and thank you.
Foreign policy, it might sound complicated, but really it's relationships. So just think about it as relationships, and so we know this in our personal and professional relationships. You got to keep your word to your friends. You got to be loyal to your friends. People who've stood with you, got to stand with them.
Talking about the cronies.
You got to know who your adversaries are and keep them in check. But what
she's talking about American consumers and workers
is that he has betrayed our friends and embraced dictators around the world. Let's take, for example, Russia. So, Russia
watching Democrats red bait is my favorite mood of 2020.
Russia interfered in the election of the
It's amazing. Not China, which is like far more aggressive and actually communist. It is a very, very interesting dynamic of where the Republicans are demonizing all of China, and the Democrats are demonizing all of Russia, and it is an absolutely astounding thing to behold.
I want to see how Pence responds to her going after Russia and Russia interfering in the election. Because with everything that was declassified, true or not true, I want to see what his response to this is.
With allies around the country, and because of Donald Trump's unilateral approach to foreign policy, coupled with his isolationism, he pulled us out and has made.
Oh, and real quick, for anybody out there who is saying that I need to stop vaping, apparently you've never watched this show before.
You have never watched.
You have never watched this show before.
There is no way you would. This man would end the stream before he would stop vaping.
That's right.
Absolutely. Shout out to Jordan Harris.
Thank you.
Hashtag Vote Gold.
Harris. Vice President, let me give you a chance to
shout out to Jordan Fetcher. Try and come
Trump
to Lafayette, Indiana. I was in Indiana a couple months ago. I'll try to get back as soon as possible. Shout out to
when Joe Biden was
Steve
vice
Hunsinger.
president, they promised to do that, and they never did. We've stood strong with our allies, but we've been demanding. NATO is now contributing more to our common defense than ever before, thanks to President Trump's leadership. We've strengthened our alliances across the
What that means
Asia
is you're
Pacific.
still paying
And
for the
we've
defense
stood
of other
strong.
countries.
Against those who would do us harm.
At a time when we're
when
$27 trillion
Trump came
in
into
debt
office,
and in the worst recession
ISIS
of
had
our
captured an
lives.
area of the Middle East
George
the
Jorgensen
size
would
of
end all of
Pennsylvania.
that nonsense.
But
These
President
countries can
Trump
defend themselves. They can afford to
unleashed the
do so.
American military.
It's time to bring the troops
And
home
our
and end the
armed
empire
forces destroyed
overseas.
the
It's made
ISIS
us less
caliphate
safe.
and
It
took
has
down their
made
leader,
us less.
al-Baghdadi, without one American casualty.
It has caused
al-Baghdadi
immeasurable
was
suffering
responsible
overseas, not to
for
mention
the
all the
death
suffering
of
to
thousands.
veterans that come home and often are
But
dealing
notably,
with
America's hearts
PTSD and
today
other
are with the
issues,
family of Kayla
including the ones who
the parents of
unfortunately
which
come
are
home
here
in
with us
flag draped
tonight in
caskets.
Salt
It
Lake
needs
City.
to end. The empire needs to
Today,
end. We have been made less safe.
two
We have
of
been
the
made less
ISIS
secure,
killers
and it is time for us to
responsible
heal.
for Kayla Mueller's murder.
Shout
were
out
brought to
to
justice in the
Rio
United States.
Gradius. Shout out to
John was
Uhan
killed on the
Roderick.
battlefield along with Kayla.
Sydney says hi. Hi, Sydney.
The
Shout out
reality
to
is
Bonnie F.
Don't read that one
Joe
out
Biden
loud.
was vice president. We had an opportunity.
I'm
Save
definitely not
Kayla
going to.
Moore.
Yeah.
Breaks my heart to reflect on it, but the military came into the Oval Office, presented a plan. They said they knew where Kayla was. Baghdadi had held her for 18 months, abused her mercilessly before they killed her. But when Joe Biden was vice president, they hesitated for a month. And when armed forces finally went in, it was clear she'd been moved 2 days earlier. And her family says with a heart that broke the heart of every American that if President Donald Trump had been president, they believe Kayla would be alive today.
Thank you, Vice
Look, we
President.
destroyed the ISIS caliphate. And you talk about re-entering the Iran nuclear deal. I mean, the last administration transferred $1.8 billion to the leading state sponsor
Thank you, Vice
of
President.
terrorism. President
The
Donald
leading
Trump
state
got us
sponsor
out
of
the deal.
terrorism is Saudi Arabia
And
or
when Qasem
arguably the
Soleimani
United
was
States
traveling
government.
to Baghdad
That was
to
money
harm
that
two
was
Americans, President
owned
Donald
by
Trump took
Chinese,
them
by
out.
Iranian
America
private
is
Iranian
safer,
company
our allies are
assets.
safer,
That
and
was
the American
them getting
people
their
know
money
President
back
Donald Trump
largely.
will never
Thank you, Vice
And
President.
if I were the
I would like to
president
give
of Iran,
Senator
I would
Harris
want
a
nukes
chance to
too,
respond,
because
but
that's a
not
great
at-
way to not get bombed by the U.S.
But I would like equal time.
Yes.
That's actually the only way to assure that you aren't bombed by the
First of all,
U.S.
to the Mueller family, I know about your daughter's case, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What happened to her is awful, and it should have never happened. And I know Joe feels the same way. And I know that President Obama feels the same way. But you mentioned Soleimani. Let's start there. So after the strike on Soleimani, there was a counter strike on our troops in Iraq. And they suffered serious brain injuries. And do you know what Donald Trump dismissed them as? Headaches. And this is about a pattern of Donald Trump's, where he has referred
Why are they there?
to our men who are serving in our military as suckers
Why
and
are they
losers.
there? Neither one
Donald
of these
Trump,
two
who went to
will say that the
Arlington
problem
Cemetery
is
and
that
stood
they're
above
there.
the graves of our fallen heroes and said, what's in it for
Our
them?
fallen heroes deserve
Because,
for
of
there
course,
to not
you know,
be
he
any
only
more
thinks about
fallen
what's in
heroes
it
because we
for
bring
him.
them home, because
Let's
the whole
take
thing has been
what
a
he said about
dismal,
John McCain,
murderous failure
a
that has
great
only
American
benefited
hero.
central bankers around the world,
and
especially
Donald
here in
Trump
the U.S.
says
through the Federal
he
Reserve,
doesn't deserve to be called a
military
hero
and energy
because he was a
contractors,
prisoner
huge big
of
business
war.
cronies,
Take-
foreign
and this is
dictatorships,
very important.
and
When you
drug
wanna talk
cartels,
about
global
who is the
drug
current
cartels.
commander-in-chief.
Those are the people who have benefited. Oh, and the terror groups who use these invasions as a way to, as a means of recruitment for their terror groups when they aren't directly receiving funding and arming and training from the U.S. government and its Western proxies.
And Donald Trump had talked at least 6 times to Vladimir Putin and never brought up the subject. Joe Biden would never do that.
Thank you.
Joe Biden would, but Joe Biden.
I mean, Joe Biden's son would get a
hold
donate.
Russia
It would
to
get
account
a.
for
You'd have to
point-
give a shout out to Moscow for the
To our nation's
$3.5 million donation.
who are
Good.
sacrificing
Hashtag
their lives
don't
for the sake
mention
of our
this
democracy
donation.
and our safety.
Thank you, Senator Harris. This is such an important issue, but we have other important issues as well. And
Susan,
I want to make sure we have a chance
I really have to
talk about.
respond to that.
I'm-
Look, she has.
15 seconds because
Well, I gotta
we're
have
trying
more
to
than
keep.
that. Look.
Well, I'm sorry, but Vice President
Look,
Pence, you've
I-
had
Uh-oh,
more time
well,
than
wow,
she's
Mike
had.
Pence
So
is
far,
out of nowhere.
Mike Pence standing up and
Standing up. I need
Try-
more than 15 seconds.
Are absurd.
I'm sorry, Vice
My
President
son is
Pence.
a captain in the United
Yes.
States Marine Corps. My son-in-law is deployed in the United States Navy. I can assure all of you, with sons and daughters serving in our military, President Donald Trump not only respects but reveres all of those who serve in our armed forces. And
If that were
any
true,
suggestion otherwise
you would
is
bring them
ridiculous.
home.
right.
But
Let
thank
me
you,
also
Vice
say,
President Pence.
the
Vice
American
President Pence,
people
you know,
deserve, Susan,
Vice
the
President
They
American
respect
people
I
deserve
didn't,
to know
what you
Vice
are
President
able
Pence, I did not-
to
excuse
do
me.
for those that
Susan,
put
I did
them in
not create
office.
the
They
rules for
don't. If
tonight.
they respected you, they would
Your-
bring you
Your
home.
campaigns agreed to the rules for tonight's debate with the Commission on Presidential Debates.
Oh,
I'm here
wow.
to
Oh,
enforce
she's
them,
not do- oh,
which
she's not
involves
playing.
Moving from one
She-
topic to
yeah,
another,
Susan Page
giving
is not
equal
playing around.
time to both of you.
Does
which
she
is
have
why
like a
I'm trying
mute
very
button?
hard.
Go right ahead.
So I want to.
No, I don't think they have a mute button in this one. I think they might have one in the presidential.
As the last topic.
You're
was,
gonna need
and that
it.
is this-
You're just gonna see it.
On Monday,
between
the
Trump and
Senate
Biden in the
Judiciary
next
Committee
debate.
is
That'll
scheduled
be
to
funny.
open hearings on Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. Senator Harris, you'll be there as a member of the committee. Her confirmation would cement the court's conservative majority and make
This
it
is where you get to
likely
watch
open
them
to
say
more
the
abortion
opposite of what they would
restrictions,
say
even
if
to
it were
overturning the
2016.
landmark
Let's
Roe v.
all
Wade
enjoy.
ruling.
I would have
Access
so
to
much fun
abortion
in this
would then
moment
be
of
up to the
saying,
states.
as soon as one of them would say
Vice
something, I'd
President
say,
Pence, you're the former governor of Indiana.
that's what
If
Pence would
Roe
have
v.
said
Wade is
4 years ago.
overturned,
And then when Pence
what
says
would you
something,
want
I'd say,
Indiana to do? Would
that's
you want
what
your home state to ban
Harris would have said
all abortion?
4 years ago.
You have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Well, thank you for the question, but I'll use a little bit of my time to respond to that very
No.
important issue before. The American people deserve to know.
He wanted it.
Soleimani,
I'd
the
want
Iranian
more than
general
15
responsible-
seconds.
Yeah, he was getting more than 15 seconds, one way or another.
When
He
the
was getting
opportunity
his damn
came,
25
when someone
seconds.
headed to Baghdad to kill more Americans, President Trump didn't hesitate. And Qasem Soleimani is gone. But you deserve to know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually criticized the decision to take out Qasem Soleimani. It's really inexplicable, but with regard to Joe Biden, it's explainable. Because history records that Joe Biden actually opposed the raid against Osama bin Laden. It's absolutely essential that we have a commander-in-chief who will not hesitate to act to protect American
the
lives
worst-
and to protect American service
You
members,
have
and
two
that's what you
people
have
arguing
President
over
Donald
who
Trump.
can engage in the
Now,
most
with regard
pandering
to the
jingoism,
Supreme Court of the
and it
United
is.
States, let me say, President Trump and I
If
could
this
not be
was
more
some kind of
enthusiastic
theater instead of like something that
about the
actually affected the
opportunity
lives
to
of
see Judge
people,
Amy Coney
I would
Barrett
be clapping
become
at
justice
the
in
absolute
Now, she's a brilliant woman.
astounding.
She will
It's
bring a
almost
lifetime of
inspiring
experience and
how
a sizable American family
they can cynically
to the
look at
Supreme
the
Court of
people
the
they're
United
victimizing
States.
every day and say, I
And our hope
respect
is
you.
in the hearing
It's
next week,
incredible.
unlike
It is-
Justice Kavanaugh
It's
received with
definitely
treatment
an
from you and others.
incredible thing. By the
we
way,
hope
I'd be
she gets
wearing
a
the
fair
shirt at the debate. I
hearing.
just want to make that clear.
And we particularly hope that we don't see the kind of attacks on her Christian faith that we saw before. I mean, the Democrat chairman of the Judiciary Committee before, when Judge Barrett was being confirmed for the Court of Appeals, expressed concern that the dogma of her faith lived loudly in her. Dick Durbin of Illinois said that it was a concern. Senator, I know one of our judicial nominees you actually attacked because they were a member of the Catholic Knights of Columbus, just because the Knights of Columbus holds pro-life views and
Thank you.
pro-marriage views.
Thank you, Vice President
So
Pence. Your
my
time
hope
is
is
up.
that when the hearing takes place,
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
that Judge Amy Coney Barrett will be respected,
Thank you,
treated
Vice President
respectfully,
Pence.
voted and confirmed
Thank
to the
you.
Supreme Court of the United States.
Senator Harris, you're the senator from and former Attorney General of California. So let me ask you a parallel question to the one I posed to the Vice President. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want California to do? Would you want your home state to enact no restrictions on access to abortion? And you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you,
No.
Susan. First of all, Joe Biden and I.
Now, note that they did not ask her whether or not she thinks that they should confirm Amy Coney Barrett. And
Yeah.
back in 2016, let me read what she said. The president is going to be in office through January of next year. We as Americans deserve to have a fully staffed United States Supreme Court. There are very important issues before the Supreme Court right now.
Right.
I'm wondering if she wouldn't have said that this time.
27
I
days
imagine
before
she wouldn't. What
the
an
decision
interesting
about
flex.
who will be the next president.
Pivot here to
And, you know,
To Roe v.
before,
Wade.
when this
Roe v.
conversation has
Wade.
come up, you know, it's been about election year or election time.
There was kind of a gotcha
literally
question. Would
in
you
an
have
election.
no restrictions on abortion?
Over 4
Yeah.
million people have
You
voted.
jerk.
People are in the process of voting right now. And so Joe has been very clear, as the American people are. Let the American people fill that seat in the White House, and then we'll fill that seat on the United States Supreme Court. And to your point, Susan, the issues before us couldn't be more serious. There's the issue of choice, and I will always fight for a woman's right to make a decision about her own body. It should be her decision and not that of Donald Trump and the Vice President, Michael Pence. But let's also look at what else is before the court. It's the Affordable Care Act. Like, literally in the midst of a public health pandemic, when over 210,000 people have died and 7 million people probably have what will be in the future considered a pre-existing condition because you contracted the virus.
Under the system that
Donald
you
Trump is in
are
court
about
right
to
now
defend.
trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And I said it before, and it bears repeating. This means that there will be no more protections if they win for people with pre-existing conditions. This means that over 20 million people will lose your coverage. It means that if you're under the age of 26, you can't stay on your parents' coverage anymore. And here's the thing. The contrast couldn't be more clear. They're trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Joe Biden is saying, let's expand coverage. Let's give you a choice of a public option or private coverage.
They're actually,
Let's bring
neither
down
one is going to get rid of it. One of them wants to expand it, the other one wants to rebrand it and then expand it. The Affordable Care Act, which has driven up the cost of health care even more massively than before it existed. They both are going to expand it. The actual policy, whatever the name they use is the same
you are
policy.
supporting, your administration supporting, that would strike down the Affordable Care Act. The president says, President Trump says that he's going to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he has not explained how he would do that. And that was one of the toughest nuts to crack when they were passing the Affordable Care Act. So tell us specifically, how would your administration protect Americans with pre-existing
I have to see
conditions
what
to
he says.
access to affordable insurance if the Affordable Care Act is struck down?
Well, thank you, Susan. But let me just say, addressing your very first question, I couldn't be more proud to serve as vice president to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life. I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it.
He's talking to 20% of voters who only vote based on this.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris support taxpayer funding of abortion all the way up to the moment of birth.
Your administration's continued to fund abortion.
Increase funding to Planned Parenthood of America. Now, for our part, I would never presume how Judge Amy Coney Barrett would rule on the Supreme Court of the United States, but we'll continue to stand strong for the right to life. When you speak about the Supreme Court, though, I think the American people
Your
really
administration
deserve an answer,
continues to
Senator
fund abortion with taxpayer
Are you and Joe
dollars.
Biden gonna pack
What
the
a
court
cynical lie to
if Judge
people
Amy
who
Coney
only
Barrett is
vote based
confirmed?
on this one issue.
I mean, there have been 29 vacancies on the Supreme Court during presidential election years from George Washington.
But this is the one issue where you have the Christian conservatives that are going, this is what they're going to vote on. So you have to push this. You have to push it, because then they're going to say, okay, well, now if we get Amy Coney Barrett in, you're going to have the opportunity to overturn Roe v. Wade. When in all actuality, all you need is a president that won't sign a funding bill that funds Planned Parenthood or other providers.
And implements policies that greatly reduce the amount of abortions by increasing the economy, by deregulating, increasing the economy and lowering the cost of living through deregulation of the regulations that drove up the cost of living and made it unaffordable to hire Americans. And also by getting the federal government out of the adoption question. Adoptive parents who are trying to adopt children are often unable to do so. They spend thousands of dollars, are frustrated for years, and eventually give up, while children grow up in one foster home after the next, where they are often subjected to abuse and rape and neglect. And ultimately, a lot of them, an increasing number of them, graduate out, meaning that they turn 18 and are told, all right, you're on your own now. They have often never had a parent, or at least not in the time that they have been, that they've had memories that they could remember having one, because the government involvement makes it so hard to adopt American children. All of these things contribute to pregnant women who can't afford their children saying, I'm going to have an abortion. I already have children. I can't afford them. And you have one side that just wants to, pretend that, that these conditions aren't making there be more abortions. And then you have the other side who also wants to do that, while also demonizing women who get abortions as, heartless baby murderers, when in fact many of them are mothers who are making an incredibly difficult choice based on the survival of the children that they currently have. You reduce the conditions that lead to abortions instead of trying to get government involved in it, and you end taxpayer funding for abortions. The only person who's going to reduce the number of abortions without trying to infringe upon the rights and the life of pregnant women is Joe Jorgensen. These two will continue funding abortions and leading to and contributing more policies that continue to make abortions continue to increase.
Let's talk about the fact. Yeah, I'm about to. So the Trump-Pence administration has been, because I sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Susan, as you mentioned, and I've witnessed the appointments for lifetime appointments to the federal courts, district courts, courts of appeal. People who are purely ideological, people who have been reviewed by legal professional organizations and found to have been not competent, are substandard. And do you know that of the 50 people who President Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments, not one is black? This is what they've been doing. You want to talk about packing a court? Let's have that discussion.
All right, thank you, Senator. Let's go on and talk about the issue of racial justice.
I just want the record to reflect she never answered the question. So maybe the next debate, Joe Biden will answer the question, but I think the American people know the answer.
Thank you, Vice President. In March, Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency room technician in Louisville, was shot and killed after police officers executing a search warrant in a narcotics investigation broke into her apartment. The police said they identified themselves. Taylor's boyfriend said he didn't hear them do that. He used a gun registered to him to fire a shot, which wounded an officer. The officers then fired more than 20 rounds into the apartment. They say they were acting in self-defense. None of them have been indicted in connection with her death. Senator Harris, in the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes.
I don't believe so, and I've talked with Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, and her family, and her family deserves justice. She was a beautiful young woman. She had as her life goal to become a nurse, and she wanted to become an EMT to first learn what's going on out on the street, so she could then become a nurse and save lives. And her life was taken unjustifiably and tragically and violently. And it brings me to, you know, the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that America witnessed, during which an American man was tortured and killed under the knee of an armed, uniformed police officer. And people around our country, of every race, of every age, of every gender, perfect strangers to each other, marched shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, fighting
during a pandemic
for us to finally achieve that ideal of equal justice under law. And I was a part of those peaceful protests. And I believe strongly that, first of all, we are never going to condone violence, but we always must fight for the values that we hold dear, including
she's not going to name a single policy
and that's
issue.
why Joe Biden and I have said on this subject. Look, and I'm a former career prosecutor. I know what I'm talking about. Bad cops.
Yeah, no, you locked up a ton of black people.
Right.
Yes.
She can't name one because she used all of
America
them.
and our criminal justice system, which is why Joe and I will immediately ban chokeholds and carotid holds. George Floyd would be alive today if we did that.
What
we
on
will
earth?
require a national registry.
It's illegal to commit murder. He committed murder.
On the issue of criminal justice.
Banning chokeholds. Oh my
Get
Lord.
rid of private prisons and cash bail, and
Thank
we
you.
will decriminalize
Okay, cash
marijuana,
jail.
and
Thank
we
you,
will
Senator Harris.
we will
Cash jail.
expunge the records of those who
got
have been
one, cash
convicted
bail.
of marijuana. This is
Thank
a
you,
time
Senator
for
Harris.
leadership on a tragic
So keeping
issue
marijuana
of
illegal,
unarmed black
but just
people in
taking it
America.
from them
Thank you,
and
Senator
not
Harris.
charging them.
Vice President Pence,
Which would
let
have
me
done
pose the
nothing
same
for
question
Breonna
to you.
Taylor or George Floyd.
In the case
End
of
qualified
Breonna
immunity
Taylor,
so bad officers
was
and bad
justice
actors in
done?
government are held
You have 2
accountable.
minutes, uninterrupted.
End no-knock raids, end civil asset forfeiture, end the war on drugs,
Well, our heart
end
breaks
mandatory minimum
the loss of
sentencing. So.
any innocent American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our justice system, a grand jury that refused the evidence. And it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor,
Wow.
you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence.
Wow,
got it
he's
wrong.
taking the Breonna's
entitled to your
killers did
opinion,
nothing
Senator.
wrong route.
I think, look, and with regard to George
Yeah, but that's
Floyd,
speaking
there's
to
no
his
excuse
base.
for what happened to George Floyd. Justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting that followed.
So this is the
it really is
Republican-Democrat debate
Flora
on
Westbrook
not
was
a
with us
single
here tonight in
policy.
Salt Lake
One
City.
talks about racial justice, the other one
Just 2
talks
weeks
about
ago,
law and
I
order.
stood at
No
what
one actually
used to
presents
be
anything that's going to change a single damn
her
thing.
salon.
By the way, you want to stop
Was
riots and
burned to the
looting, end the
ground
war on guns that
by
your
rioters and looters.
your running mate Donald Trump has
Flora is
continued to
still
enforce.
trying to
That
put
makes
her
it
life
difficult
back
for everyday
together.
Americans to protect their
And I
homes
must tell you,
and their
this-
properties and their businesses, as well
this
as making it
presumption
increasingly difficult for
that you hear
protesters to protect
consistently
themselves from violence
from Joe
as well.
Biden and Kamala Harris.
You'll notice neither of them are saying that.
That
Nor
America
would
is
they.
systemically racist.
Nor would they. They can't.
And that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities
Wow. This
is a great insult to the men and women who serve in law enforcement. And I want everyone to know who puts on the uniform of law enforcement every day that President Trump and I stand with you. And it is remarkable that when Senator Tim Scott tried to
Wait,
pass
did
the
something
police
land on
reform
his head?
bill, brought together a group of Republicans and Democrats, Senator Harris, you got up
There's
and walked
something
out
on the
of the
top
room.
of his head.
And then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate
There
floor.
is something on the top of his head.
There is
Accountability,
something
new
on the
recruit
top of his
resources.
head.
Look, we don't have to choose between
There is
supporting
a
law enforcement,
not small
improving public
insect
safety, and
that has
supporting our
landed on Mike
African
Pence's
American
head
neighbors
while
and
he
all
does
of our
his part
minorities.
in the Republican
Under
rap
President
rope.
Trump's leadership,
That is the
always
ghost
stand with law enforcement
of
and will do what we
Ronald Reagan landing on Pence's head and saying yes.
Record unemployment, record
Vice
investments in
President Pence, your time
education,
is
and will
up.
fight for school choice for all of our members.
Thank you, Vice
I'd like to respond.
Senator Harris.
I will not sit here and be lectured by the Vice President on what it means to enforce the laws of our country. I am the only one on this stage who has personally prosecuted everything from child sexual assault.
To victimless crimes of hundreds of thousands of African Americans who are still in prison now, and many of whom are unable to vote, and you made that way permanently in California. This is the perfect example of why you will. Wasting your vote is voting for either of these two parties, and this is a perfect example as to why. Wherever you fall on this position, neither one is presenting an actual policy. They are presenting rhetoric to their base to fund a culture war, to fuel the flames of a culture war, which is often spilling out into actual fights on our streets and in our neighborhoods, instead of presenting actual policies, because A, they want to keep you all at each other's throats and hateful of each other instead of being solutions oriented. And B, they'd have to acknowledge that both of them have been working together to make these policies that led to these bad outcomes. This is the political theater that leads to the deaths and suffering of so many Americans. It has to end. It will only end when we stop taking these people seriously and start voting for a real opportunity not to throw our vote away. And that is voting libertarian.
Where a young woman was killed, and on the other side there were neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches, shouting racial epithets, anti-Semitic slurs, and Donald Trump, when asked about it, said there were fine people on both sides. This is who we have as the President of the United States. And America, you deserve better. Joe Biden will be a president.
Oh, it's a baby
who brings
bat.
our
Yes,
country together
that is a
and
baby
and
bat.
It's a baby bat.
recognizes the
That is
beauty of our diversity and the fact that we
Senator
all
Harris,
have
thank
so
you.
much more in common than what separates us.
Vice President Pence, let me give you a minute to respond.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that very much. I think that's one of the things that makes people dislike the media so much in this country, Susan, is that you selectively edit, just like Senator Harris did, comments that President Trump and I and others on our side of the aisle make. I mean, Senator Harris conveniently omitted, after the president made comments about people on either side of the debate over monuments, he condemned the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, and has done so.
This is the weirdest, stupidest
repeatedly.
conversation about
You're concerned
nonsense
that he
that doesn't
doesn't
matter.
condemn neo-Nazis.
Like, this started as a
President Trump and his
conversation
Jewish
about how are we going to end police
His daughter and
brutality,
son-in-law
and
are
it has
Jewish.
turned into, did Donald
This
Trump
is a president
say
who
nice things? Did he
respects
say
and
that there were
cherishes
good
all
Nazis?
of the American people.
3
But you
years
talk about
ago.
having personally prosecuted. I'm glad you brought up your record, Senator.
Thank you.
But I really need to make this point. When you were DA in San Francisco,
He's
when
gonna
you
do it.
left office, African Americans were 19 times more likely to be prosecuted for minor drug offenses than whites and Hispanics.
Wow.
When you were Attorney
Thank you.
General of California,
Thank you,
you
Vice President.
increased the disproportionate incarceration of
Thank
blacks
you.
in California. You did nothing on criminal justice reform in California. You didn't lift a finger to
you.
pass the First Step Act on Capitol Hill. I mean, the reality is your record
Thank
speaks
you,
for
Vice
itself.
President
President Trump and I have fought for criminal justice reform.
Thank you, Vice President.
Isn't it sad when, as terrible as Trump has been
Thank you, sir.
on criminal justice
Thank you.
reform,
You know, there is
he's
no more important
arguably
issue than the
marginally
final
better
issue that we're
than
going to talk about
the
tonight,
Democrat
and that is
VP candidate?
I'm not gonna,
itself.
he is better than marginally better than the VP candidate and the presidential candidate. He, when it comes to criminal justice reform, credit where it's due, Trump is not that bad. He's not great, but he's light years beyond the other two in their in how they've
In
been
that specific subject, yeah.
right, in that
Yeah,
specific
in that
subject,
specific subject,
in how
yeah,
they've been in
yeah.
the past.
There was an actual net reduction in the number of people in prison. Now, some of that was just the sunset provisions of people that had sentencing that were charged during the 1994 crime bill that finally are allowed to get out of prison. But this is. I'm surprised he did that, because now it kind of messes up his whole "I support the police no
But
matter
I
what
want
they
to
do."
talk about the connection between what Joe and I will do and my record, which includes I was the first statewide officer to institute a requirement that my agents would wear body cameras and keep them on full time. We were the first.
You
to
arrested
initiate
and put in
a
prison
requirement
more
that there
black
would be a training
people,
for law enforcement on
way
implicit bias,
disproportionately
because
higher,
yes,
more
Joe
black. What was
Biden
he
and
just
I
said? Like 19 times.
Yeah.
That's why it was
Implicit
like
bias
20
does
times
exist,
as
Mr.
many
Vice
black
President,
people as white
contrary to
people.
what you may
You're talking
believe.
about body cams.
We did the work of instituting reforms that were about investing in reentry. This is the work that we have done and the work we will do going forward. And again, I will not be lectured by the Vice President.
Greg Hoffman, if you want to vote for me, you go to YouTube and you vote with your dollars. That's the only way you can really vote for me, because I'm not running for anything.
Senator Harris, and I'd like to pose I'd like you to respond first to the question on our final topic, the election itself. President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If your ticket wins and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what steps would you and Vice President Biden then take? What would happen next? You have 2 minutes.
So I'll tell you, Joe and I are, I think, particularly proud of the coalition that we've built around our campaign. We probably have one of the broadest coalitions of folks that you've ever seen in a presidential race. Of course, we have.
This was a
the support of
change-up. Why would
Democrats,
you
but
not
also
hit this out of the park? What is she
independents and
doing?
Republicans. In fact, 7 members of President George W. Bush's cabinet are supporting our ticket. We have the support of Colin Powell, Cindy McCain, John Kasich, over 500 generals, retired generals, and former national security experts and advisors are supporting our campaign. And I believe they are doing that because they know that Joe Biden has a deep, deep-seated commitment to fight for our democracy and to fight for the integrity of our democracy and to bring integrity back to the White House. And
Do you
so
still think he
we
raped those
believe in the
women? Because you
American
said that you
we
did.
believe in our democracy. And here's what I'd like to say to everybody. Vote. Please vote. Vote early. Come up with a plan to vote. Go to iwillvote.com. You can also
Why
go to
would she not answer
joebiden.com.
this?
We have it within our power
What
in
a
these next 27
easy question
days
for her to knock out of the
make
park and
decision about
trot
what
around
will
the
be
stage.
The course.
Man, really? Yes.
I mean, if there was a time to do it, it would be when
Right.
she did that garbage. Yeah, 9 muscles. Here we go.
Hurt our democracy with what Donald Trump has been doing, as he did on the debate stage last week, when again in front of 70 million people.
Oh, did it do that again? Why? It did this last time.
Well, that's not good.
That's not good. Why did you cut off Kamala? I mean, I get it, but
I mean, I get it. I get it, because like, answer the question, Senator Harris. What? So
it did this last
What
time,
a-
but I just kept it muted for a second while we talked, and then it came back on.
And President Trump
Yep.
refuses
Yeah.
to accept a peaceful transfer of power. What would be your role and responsibility as vice president? What would you personally do? You have 2 minutes.
This is a terrible question for him because, like, if he says I won't let that happen, Trump will blast him.
Because while Joe Biden and Kamala Harris rattle off a long litany of the establishment in Washington, D.C., an establishment that Joe Biden's been a part of for 47 years, President Donald Trump has launched a movement of everyday Americans from every walk of life. And I have every confidence that those same Americans that delivered that historic victory in 2016, they see this president's record where we rebuild our military, we revived our economy.
He's answering the way you have to answer this. Why would she not answer the damn question? Like,
unleashing American energy.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
To our federal courts at every level.
I mean, you would say if he didn't do that, it's a constitutional crisis, and the military will have to remove him. Like, I mean, that, like,
when you talk
that's
about
the
accepting
answer.
the outcome of the
Like,
election,
wow.
I must tell you, Senator, your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election. I mean, it's amazing. When Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, the FBI actually spied on President Trump and my campaign. I mean, there were documents released this week that the CIA actually made a referral to the FBI documenting that those allegations were coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign. And of course, we've all seen the avalanche, what you put the country through for the better part of 3 years until it was found that there was no obstruction, no collusion, case closed.
So
Senator
he's saying
Harris, you and
that
your
spying
colleagues
is bad.
in the Congress tried to impeach the president of the United States.
Newsflash.
Over a
He's saying
head of government says spying is bad.
on head of government. That's the key. That's the key. That's the difference.
Let me just say, I think we're going to win this election. President Trump and I are fighting every day in courthouses to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from changing the rules and creating this universal mail-in voting that will create a massive opportunity for voter fraud. We have a free and fair election.
There's been mail-in voting in Oregon for years. There's never been any kind of widespread voter fraud that would lead to, that would actually change a major electoral outcome in any real way. There's been small anecdotal reports, but nothing that would actually change the thing. I actually like mail-in voting because it sends those mail-in ballots to a lot of people that typically don't vote. They're going to look at the ballot, go, well, I'm definitely not voting for Trump or Biden. And then they see Jo Jorgensen on there, and maybe they look into her and vote for her.
Brecklin Brown. She's an 8th grader at Springville Junior High in Springville, Utah. And here's what she wrote, quote, "When I watch the news, all I see is arguing between Democrats and Republicans. When I watch the news, all I see is citizen fighting against citizen. When I watch the news, all I see are 2 candidates from opposing parties trying to tear each other down. If our leaders can't get along, how are the citizens supposed to get along?" And then she added, "Your examples could make all the difference to bring us together," end quote. So to each of you in turn, I'd like you to take 1 minute and respond to Brecklin. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute.
That's a good question.
It's a wonderful question. And let me just commend you for taking an interest in public life. I started following the news when I was very young. And in America,
are you going to not answer that?
We believe in a free and open exchange of debate. And we celebrate
Unless
that.
you want to include third parties.
That's how we've created literally the freest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world.
If you're a crony.
I would tell you that.
That child didn't say
that. What you're seeing on your local news networks is synonymous with the American people. You know, I look at the relationship between Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late justice who we just lost from the Supreme Court, and the late Justice Antonin Scalia. They were on polar opposites on the Supreme Court of the United States. One very liberal, one very conservative. But what's been learned since her passing was the 2 of them and their families were the very closest of friends. I mean, here in America, we can disagree.
Yes, we are aware that
Republicans
Republicans are very close friends.
I have on this stage tonight. But when the debate is over, we come together as Americans. And that's what people do in big cities and small towns all across this country. So I just want to encourage you, Brecklin. I want to tell you that we're going to work every day to have government as good as our people. The American people each and every day love a good debate.
A government as good as the people would be one that provided as many choices as the American people would want.
In times of need, and we've especially learned that
Thank you,
through
Mr.
the
Vice President.
difficulties of this year.
Senator Harris, what would you say to Brecklin?
First of all, I love hearing from our young leaders. And when I hear her words, when I hear your words, Brecklin, I know our future is bright because
Plot twist.
it is that
Brecklin's
perspective
dad was
on who
thrown
we
in
are
jail
and
by
who we
Kamala
should-
Harris.
That is a sign of leadership and is something we should all aspire to be. And that, that brings me to Joe. Joe Biden, one of the reasons that Joe decided to run for president is after Charlottesville, which we talked about earlier. It so troubled him and upset him like it did all of us, that there was that kind of hate and division. What propelled Joe to run for president was to see that over the course of the last 4 years, what Brecklin described has been happening. Joe has a long
It's never happened before that.
across the aisle and working in a bipartisan way.
Yeah.
And that's what he's going to do as president. Joe Biden has a history of lifting people
Joe
up
Biden's whole
and
thing is
fighting
don't
for their
argue with
dignity.
him. It's just going to
I
happen.
mean, you have to know Joe's story to know
And-
that Joe had.
So what she just said was Joe Biden's history is lifting people up and fighting for their dignity. The 1994 crime bill did the exact opposite of that.
Did the exact opposite
to
of that.
hundreds of thousands to millions of black men.
Yeah.
Crushed them. And now they're just going to pretend like none of it ever happened.
Your work and through eventually your vote
Thank you,
to
Senator
determine
Harris.
the future of our country and what its leadership looks like.
I'm guessing the last
Thank you,
question,
Senator
and then
Harris.
they're not
Thank
going to
you,
do
Vice President
closings.
Pence. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We want to thank also
Well, maybe
the
that was the
University
last
of Utah for its hospitality, and most of all, our thanks to all the Americans who watched this debate tonight. Again, our best wishes for a quick recovery to President Trump, the First Lady, and everyone who is battling COVID-19. The second presidential debate is next week on October 15th, a town hall style debate in Miami. We hope
You're
you'll
going
join us
ahead
then.
with this.
Yeah.
I want Donald Trump to come there wearing the same outfit that Vladimir Putin wore, where he looked like he was in this like a space outfit.
Right.
And he comes in, so he can't infect anyone. This is incredible. So, folks, we got a slightly more civil debate than we did a few days ago with those other two clowns. But what we did not get, what we also got was essentially a more civilized version of the same thing. Insults and accusations leveled against each other, pivoting and changing the subject, focusing on culture war talking points as opposed to actual solutions to the problems that were presented in the questions that they were asked. A stunning refusal very often to actually even answer the questions, and zero acknowledgement of theirs and their respective parties' complicity in working with one another to create the mess that we're in right now, which is making things so bad. In other words, everything that we fully expected, and in other words, the entire reason why I'm not on that debate stage, and for that reason why Angela Walker's not on that debate stage, and why the Green Party VP candidate, and why Joe and wasn't on the debate stage in the presidential debate. Because how easy would that have been to show the American people what a farce the duopoly is?
And if you remember, the last time that they allowed a third party to be on the debate stage was 1992 with Ross Perot. You had Ross Perot, Bill Clinton, and George Bush. And Ross Perot, I think it was 16 or 19%. I don't remember the exact percentage. It was 16 or 19% of the popular vote. The next, in 1996, when he ran again, they didn't allow him to be on the debate stage. The reasoning behind that, granted, they probably came up with some other reasoning behind it, but the actual reasoning behind it is because he was taking too much away and the power was going to shift. Since then, since 1992, nobody else has been allowed on the debate stage, minus the Republican and the Democrat.
Yep. And also, he got 19% after dropping out.
19%. Thank you to thank you to everybody. 19%. Yeah.
19%. And came back after saying he wasn't going to run anymore.
Right.
Now, This was someone who, after the debates, prior to the debates, a good number of people thought Ross Perot was just kind of a funny little man with a high-pitched voice. Then they did the debate, and holy crap. All of a sudden, he was leading in the polls for winning the presidency for no other reason than because it was just him and George Bush Sr. and Bill Clinton. No filter, no competing narratives, just the three of them telling the American people which one should be president. And Ross Perot killed that because he was able to not play their game and say, look at both of these people who they and their parties created the problems we're facing.
Yep.
We had a similar situation. Jesse Ventura, who was absolutely seen as an ironic joke candidate until the debates, when he walked away with them solely by consistently pivoting to the fact that the two people he was running against for governor of Minnesota were the people who created the problems that Minnesotans were facing. That was enough for him to win.
Yep.
That and the fact that he was popular in Minnesota. But the fact is, that's not why he won. He won because he was able to show with no filter how much better of a choice he was than the other two clowns he was running against. Want us in these debates. It is because they are scared of us. And when I say us, I mean you too. They are scared of what will happen when enough of us stand up and fight back and say, yeah, we are here to spoil the election. We are here to take votes from Joe Biden and Donald Trump, from the Republicans and Democrats, and put it back in the hands of the people by voting for a completely different way of looking at how government and the people interact with each other. Not just a new party, not just a new politician, but an actual different way of looking at things. The libertarian way, the common sense way that recognizes that you, empowered with your power and your freedom and your money back, will be able to accomplish so much greater things than you ever could under this terrible, centrally planned, arbitrarily defined, and crony-friendly policies that the Republicans have put forward in their exclusive control of every lever of power in government for over 160 years now. That is why we are not on the debate stage. That is why Joe is not on the debate stage. That is why they are doing everything they possibly can, from ballot access suppression to debate suppression to control of the crony corporate media and suppressing other third options, to make it seem like these are the only two choices you have, because they both suck. And if literally anyone else got up there, especially if Joe Jorgensen and I got up there, it would be a no-brainer that we had to make a course correction as a country. People across the political spectrum, including people who do not vote, the apolitical, centrists, moderates, progressives, conservatives, they would see how they were being played, how they were being pitted against each other, made to be desperate and anxious in order to keep them at each other's throats so that they don't recognize, so that they can't see the theater in front of them. It would lay it bare, and that would be the end of their game. That would be the end of their entire system, and they know it. They will fight tooth and nail to stop it, and that is where you come in. Reaching out to your loved ones, reaching out to your colleagues, telling them why you are voting libertarian. And when they start with all the nonsense about, oh, you're just voting for Trump, oh, you're just voting for Biden, make it very clear that you would never vote for either one of them, why you would never vote for them, and why you are voting libertarian. When they tell you you're wasting your vote, tell them that a wasted vote is voting for the people who put us in this mess in the first place. When they tell you that you are throwing your vote away, tell them that this is an opportunity not to throw our vote away. This is an opportunity to take back what was stolen from all of us, put it back in our hands, in your hands, where it always belonged. Take back the power in this country and put America on a path to freedom, the likes of which humanity has never seen before, so that we can thrive and prosper and build a freer and happier and healthier society in the future that our children and their children and their children can enjoy.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely nothing I could add to that. And I figured I'm going to clip that later and put it on a YouTube, like a best of. So I figured I wouldn't say anything for a second, so that way...
You just sit there like...
I'm just going to sit there, and that way I can just clip it very nicely. Tough to say. out of those two.
Real quick. David Sponsler said, just check Google Trends and searches for Jo Jorgensen and Libertarian are spiking again. Imagine that.
Weird.
And
it's tough to say, other than Spike, who's on that side? Other than Spike, it's tough to say who won that debate.
Oh man, between them?
Between them, yeah. Like, I can't see, only because Kamala Harris kept trying to downplay her record, I kept hitting her mentally. Like, not hitting, like knocking her down in points.
Yeah. But that's different from how it connects with people who may not know her record as well. I was actually, up until Mike Pence hit her for her actual record as a prosecutor, I was saying that Harris was probably edging him out on that because he was so muted and so
Pensian.
Yeah, he was so Mike Pence about the whole thing and was totally content just not answering the question and saying, like, you know, I support the American people, like the most empty of blatant pandering platitudes. And I mean, she wasn't much better, but she at least hit him on stuff, and he seemed. And then when he would hit her on stuff, it was stuff that wasn't really often congruent with what they were even talking about. It was like, I want to change the subject to the Green New Deal when we're talking about like COVID and stuff. So it was weird. But then he hit her with that, and he did the thing where he said, I want more than 15 seconds. And I just like that.
Right.
Maybe that's just my bias. I liked what he said that.
I agree. I agree there, because when he was saying, I need more than 15 seconds to answer this, and Susan just forgot. Susan? Yeah, Susan. When Susan from USA Today, when she kept arguing, he was like, no, I'm going to take more than 15 seconds. And eventually she just moved on, which was the right thing to do as the moderator. However, when he went back, he goes, I'm going to answer that question because
I'm going to answer it anyway.
I'm going to answer that question because the next question you just asked me isn't going to take me that long. Now, I think Kamala, many of the people in the comments, they were making comments such as her voice is awful. Her voice is awful. It's like nails on a chalkboard. I agree with all of that. But I feel that way about most politicians who are Republicans. So I can't really knock somebody on that, but the ideas that she was pushing either were absolutely blatantly false as to what it says on their website, what they've said out in public, or she was attacking Mike Pence for a multitude of things that, while many of them did have merit, they weren't really Mike's decisions. He was just the VP that was waiting in the wings. Now, one of the interesting things about this debate is it was pushed as potentially the highest watched VP debate in history because of the age of both Trump and Biden, and the fact that one of these two could end up inheriting the presidency. One of these two.
Very likely. I mean, you've got Joe Biden is the oldest person to ever run for president. So Kamala Harris could very well end up replacing him if he got elected very early, because he is 78 and does appear to be losing his faculties in a fairly rapid. So those who haven't been following it, Joe Biden in that debate was a lot more lucid than he has been in quite some time. Yep. And yet that's how he was still like that. Donald Trump is a 74-year-old man with low-level heart conditions and high cholesterol and obesity and COVID. So there's something there too. That's why it was most watched. Is potentially this was a debate between people who could very well end up being president during this next term if either of them get elected, either of their parties get elected. You have another alternative, which is a woman who is a brilliant self-made entrepreneur, who has never ordered people around, who has provided value to people and to the market, and who is 63 and very healthy, and her running mate, who is in his 30s, also healthy, and arguably much more importantly, I guess inarguably much more importantly, we don't want to rule you. We recognize that the bad policies of these parties and the politicians behind them are why things are as bad as they are, and we recognize that the only way to fix this is to dismantle them and to put the power and the money and the freedom back in your hands and remove these barriers and burdens that are making your life so difficult so that you can thrive. That's what we learned today.
Accurate. Also, another thing that we learned today, if you happen to be at muddiedwatersmedia.com and you hit the store and you hit the store button up in the top right, if you get a You Are the Power Spike shirt, don't get it in brown.
Don't get it in brown.
Don't get it in brown. Don't even know why that's an option.
It just says you are Spike Cohen.
Yeah, it says you. It says you are and Spike Cohen. So don't do that. If you happen to go to muddiedwatersmedia.com and hit the store link.
I want to see what it looks like. Does it look that bad when you say brown? Does it show what it looks like in brown?
And what's funny is, since I don't own a brown shirt, I'm pretty certain that I meant to hit a different color, and I was just doing it quickly, and I got it in brown because I didn't double check my work.
Are the Power? Where's that? There's that underwear you can get of mine.
Oh yeah, that Spike underwear. That Spike underwear sold like hotcakes at the beginning.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah.
Well, I don't get. Maybe I'm looking at. Oh no. I don't see the one here.
Which one?
The You Are the Power where it's in yellow and black, or I see the blue and red one, but not the yellow and black one.
It is. I mean, it's there. It's just we have so much on the store. It may take a while to.
Okay. All right. Well, at any rate, we did learn that.
How do you not see it? It's the third one.
Oh, there it is. There we go.
Yeah, it's the third one.
Heather Forrest. So when you say leaf, had that steel. Which one of these? I don't know what any of these colors are. Kelly?
You know what? Okay, so apparently you can't get it in brown. Kelly is green.
Oh. Yeah,
you can't get it. No, asphalt's gray.
Oh.
You can't get it in brown. That's only on our developer side of it. So I definitely just made a mistake.
So we also learned just now that you don't have to worry about.
You don't have to worry about getting.
That's actually a very rare shirt there.
Yeah,
that's probably
this is a
worth
one of
$1,000.
This is one of a kind.
I will sign that with a gold pen, and then we can auction that. Or you can keep it so it says you are Spike Cohen. Which, if you really think about it, all of us in a way are really Spike Cohen. Especially me. If you think about it.
That's true. I mean, you are literally Spike Cohen.
I am literally Spike Cohen.
And everybody else is figuratively Spike Cohen.
It's figuratively Spike Cohen. I mean, aren't we all Spike Cohen? Really?
Right.
Yeah. So, folks, I mean, that debate was what we could have expected. I think, obviously, if I had been on that debate, not only would have been so much more entertaining, if for no other reason than I would have literally worn this shirt, but also it would have been more informative. I think so many Americans don't realize that there are specific policies that will end these problems that they brought up. The vast majority of Americans do not realize that the reason the pandemic is as bad as it is here is because the CDC didn't allow medical professionals to do their job. This isn't a
we just crashed our website.
What's that?
We just crashed our website doing that.
Wow. Well, that's interesting.
So tomorrow, go to muddiedwatersmedia.com and
keep trying to get on.
Keep trying to get on.
Give it a little bit of time.
I was assured by our network administrator that that wouldn't happen ever again. And
yeah, they're scalable, and then there's you suddenly get thousands of times more.
And unfortunately, I was kicked off Facebook, so I can't even message the guy.
go. It's still. Uh-oh. All right. Well.
Yep.
Yeah, folks, try again in a little bit. Just try again in a little bit. So Matt.
So Spike.
Well, let's look. So again, folks, if you want to, I got some really cool news. Like I said, go check out my events. I will be all over the Eastern Seaboard, all the way down to Miami, and then I'll be working my way west into New Orleans and Texas. So I'll be doing a Waffle House tour in Ohio. Planning on going back to New Jersey and New York. Going to be campaigning in Arkansas with Dale Harrison. Going to be out in, I believe, St. Louis, Missouri. We're working on all sorts of stuff. I'm going to be in a lot of places. So very likely I will be somewhat near you. So I hope to have you come out and see me. Just stay tuned to my social media and the events as they are being presented and announced. And also, I am going to be resuming My Fellow Americans, my show. I have my laptop. I have my equipment. We will be coordinating. I don't know which days we will be coordinating for me to go to different strategic locations where they will be able to have me have the reason I haven't been able to do my show is I haven't been at home. And it's one thing for me to phone in to Matt using Wi-Fi, but for me to actually do my own show, I have to be able to have a dedicated Ethernet connection, a wired internet connection, which we just don't have on the bus. We don't have it at the hotels. It's not something that we can get. And so I've just not been able to do it, but we will be rebooting My Fellow Americans over the course of the next few weeks. We will be doing an episode a week. Cannot promise the exact day, but I will be restarting that. And I'll be doing like Q&As. I might have some fun guests and stuff like that. So hope to have you tune in for that, giving lots of campaign updates and things like that. And continue to watch every week for the Muddy Waters of Freedom as well, where Matt Wright and I parse through the week's events with the cheerful aplomb of the sweet little summer boys that we are.
And I will be appearing on the Arizona for Jorgensen Cohen Streamathon tomorrow.
Oh yeah,
I am. Yeah, from 2:30 to 3:30 Eastern, 11:30 to 12:30 Mountain. I will be on that show tomorrow, where Guy on Left may not be Guy on Left on that show. I may be Guy on Center, might be Guy on Right, might be Guy on. I don't know how they do it.
We have no idea.
We have no idea.
You could be Guy on bottom right, then switch up to top center when someone else gets knocked off and comes back on. You never know.
Super excited though, because Leilani, the person hosting the show, is a kava drinker, and she is making some for my segment. And
oh, really?
She is a native of Hawaii, and we are going to drink kava together on her show.
Nice.
Yes,
I love
very
Leilani. I got to meet her in person in Tempe, Arizona. She's fantastic. You're gonna love her.
Brandy Powers. I will post that link as soon as I get it. If Leilani is watching, please post it.
Yes. So yeah, be sure to tune in for that, and that will be fantastic. And I will try. I'm going to try to tune in for that. I'm trying to determine what my schedule will be during that time, but I should be able to tune in at least for part of it. Let's support Jorgensen Cohen, and let's support Guy on Left, who will be doing some live streaming for the campaign and for the cause. Shout out to Matt for that. And keep staying tuned in, guys. We will be continuing to update you on the state of this race and the state of this country and the state of current events. And Matt, if our website wasn't crashed, and bear with me, would there be a way for people to reach us on this internet thing? And if so, how?
Yes, if somebody wanted to reach us, they would be able to reach us at anchor.fm/muddied waters, where you, our trusted and valuable listeners, can leave us messages that on normal occasions we would play live on the air and answer questions, listen to comments, whatever, live on the air. We don't do that during debates, though, or during special events. You can also normally find us at muddiedwatersmedia.com. But kudos to you for crashing the site tonight.
Usually, try again in a little bit. I'm sure it'll be back up.
Yeah.
And thank you for that. In the meantime, you can go to our store even as the website is down, because that has a Shopify link, which is
muddied-waters-media.
muddied-waters-media.shopify.
My Shopify.
My Shopify.
I just put it in there.
.com. And you'll be able to see all of our stuff until the website is back up, which I am certain will be any day now.
Any day now.
Any week now. So, folks, thanks again for tuning in. We love you all so much. You are fantastic. We love you. And we will see you very soon. Stay tuned for My Fellow Americans and the Muddy Waters of Freedom very soon. And where we're going...
We don't need roads. Oh, that's me.
No.
$1 million.
And
by the way,
Mr. President,
my son.
Wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed